Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. If you want to help, you can send your donation through PayPal. The email is debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through Cash App, $SALSHOWTIME. Thanks for your support.
Peace, peace, peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swain L, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka Brother Moor. Wishing you all peace and blessings. This evening, I got the pleasure of being a kind of a last second show, but an interesting one at that. With the special guest, Vocab Malone. We're going to be talking about the Pews and probably a couple other things. Some hot button topics that's been going around the community as of late. But without further ado, I bring to you Vocab Malone. Peace and blessings, brother, man.
Hey, how you doing, man? Thanks. I'm glad we could put it together, man.
Yes, sir. So about these pews, sir, is there Hebrew on the pews?
I don't think so. As of now, we have no reason to think there's Hebrew on the pews. If there was discernible Hebrew, we'd be able to discern it. But there doesn't seem to be any discernible Hebrew on the pew, hence why nobody can discern it. And really, the question of writing on the pews is different from all these other questions. There's no need to mash them all together. I understand people are mashing them together, but these are really distinct, separate issues and claims. Even if it was Hebrew, it wouldn't prove the ethnicity of whoever wrote it. We still don't really even have the identity of who it would be, but it doesn't prove that they would be any particular ethnicity or part of any ethnic group. It would just mean if it was there that they knew some basic Hebrew, perhaps, but there's no reason to think it is Hebrew. That's why the latest proposal, by Kelly is ahistorical. It's not, it's barely cogent, so that's if it was discernible, it wouldn't also keep on changing what's supposedly said there. It keeps on changing and switching according to, whoever they're bringing up at the time. But there's no good reason to think that it's Hebrew, frankly. If it was, it'd be like, okay, there's some Hebrew on the pew. We don't need to lie about it either way, But this is where we're at. People were really kind of glued to these arguments,
Yes, sir. So people are going to hear something very odd that you don't hear in modern days and times. You're going to hear me and Vocab probably agree on a whole lot tonight. And people agreeing on controversial issues is not something you see too often these days and whatnot. But there's a lot of nuance in this conversation. And I think something people keep hearing me say all the time is we need to slow things down to understand the nuance and whatnot. And so I might disagree with some things that that Vocab says in terms of what's on or not on the pews, etc. However, we're not going to have any knife fights or any kind of beef on this whole thing, because we're just talking about methodology on language on the pew. We're not talking about identity claims and them kind of things there. What I think is interesting about this is people who make this conversation an identity claim conversation are willing to throw ad hominems out at anybody. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It doesn't matter your phenotype. Doesn't matter your spiritual belief, whatever. You can be an Israelite. You can be a Christian, whatever. If you disagree with this particular group's claim on the matter, you're going against the whole nation of Israel, or you're seen as an adversary for all kind of crazy reasons and whatnot. And I don't think that's a fair criticism and whatnot. it's something I wanted to touch on because I watched this on Brand the other night, to where they were trying to come at you over a concept over, again, with the ad hominems. Oh, like, what are you talking about this for? You're dealing with the transgender people on Twitter or something like that, or Instagram or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm Burium.
Yeah, and I'm like, yo, so this is crazy, right? So this is something to where, like, me and Vocab actually agree on something, right? So I was attacked for the very same kind of a concept, right? Because I actually came out in defense of traditional marriage a long time ago and whatnot, and had the nerve to talk about it publicly. So the Israelite community, once they or this particular section of the Israelite community, right, once they found out that I disagreed with them, etc., whatnot, they had to throw ad hominem attacks on me and try to attack me in the same kind of a concept, right? Try to say that I was pro-gay, all them kind of things, right? In reality, these are people who haven't, like, they're not trying to protect their community from anything concerning, like, the transgender or LGBT community agendas, etc. They're not trying to do anything about those topics, but they're just using them as ad hominem attacks or whatnot, right? They did the same thing to Sister Cherry. It was crazy, right?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point the way you bring it up. Like, they're not really doing anything for protection regarding these issues, but then they'll just use it as a weapon, right? That's what they try to do. And if anyone, it's not just these folks who care, but if in any way you're connected to maybe what we'll call larger mainstream evangelicalism, especially in America, but not only in America, and I have some connections to that for better or for worse, because like with any community, there's good and bad. One of the main concerns and issues is what is often referred to as the transgender revolution, as a part of a larger revolution of all kinds of sexual ethics and mores and values and judgments about things. And one of the, when you go on Twitter, when you go on places, when you open up a magazine, one of the loudest voices frequently in regards to this debate, besides perhaps say conservative Roman Catholics, are evangelical Christians. And the reason is there's a lot of reasons. One has to do with what you might call a conservative understanding of Genesis. And there you have men, women, created male, female. Like, and we understand that to be the case. This is how God set things up. And it ties directly into that. And then, of course, you see that play throughout the whole Bible. I'm a complementarian, and that means that the roles of elders, sometimes what we might say pastor, is reserved for qualified. So not every, but qualified men alone. That puts you in a minority position. But that's where you're recognizing distinctions of a very important kind. And then this relates honestly to homosexuality as well, because homosexuality is the beginning of the lack of proper distinction. So it's like, well, the coupling is supposed to be male and female. And when you have same-sex marriage, it says you can just replace one of those and then just have male, male, or female, female. And those are okay too. But that's a deconstruction of the institution of marriage that God himself ordains and is laid out in Genesis and then is followed all the way through. Jesus, when he's commenting on Genesis in Mark 10, he says, man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. There's the one, the male and the female. So, people say, oh, Jesus didn't say anything. Well, he did say something about that. And that's not the only place. It's also implicit in a lot of other things he says. But Mark 10 is very important in these debates. And I go to ETS every year since I think 2015 or so, maybe a little earlier, Evangelical Theological Society meeting. And, these are big discussions. These are big discussions there. Very important discussions. Some of the nature of them has changed since Obergefell passed, because with the passing of Obergefell, it's as soon as that got cleared, it's interesting how lightning fast the issue then became, the T. It immediately went from same-sex marriage is cool to the next, basically transgression, to be frank with you, with the very next thing, which was the T and the LGBTQIA+. So you see that, and that's where we are now. And the reason why there's such a great concern is not only because of the way it deconstructs what scripture and really ultimately, frankly, reality and science tell us, but it will impede upon religious freedom. And we care about that. We don't want to force everyone to agree with what we think, but freedom of worship, freedom of expression in relation to that are very important. And you're seeing these heavy-handed things come down. And so that's something I care about. That's something that matters. I've never really heard Hebrew Israelites, get into these issues, take chances on them. They'll just use it as a weapon. I'm talking about the guys who use this, against. But, you go back and you find I interviewed Michael Brown, for example, in his book, A Queer Thing Happened to America. And in fact, I brought him out to a church for a conference just to talk about that because I saw these issues looming on the horizon. This is pre-Obergefell, right? And then with Frank Turek, when I did a radio show back in the day, he had a book all about reasons why you don't want to have same-sex marriage passed. So this is also before Obergefell passed. And that was an interesting conversation. So this is going back a while. This is old school stuff. Now, because I deal mainly with issues relating to Israelism and things like that, not focusing on those issues as much these days, but they're still important. I still try to keep an eye on them. And these guys, they just don't care about any of that. They'll just look for any opportunity for slander. And it's really bizarre and distracts from the main issues. So I didn't know that they had done that to you too. I actually did not know that. How did that go down? That's wild. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Shout out to Dante. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So basically, I have the wrong opinion for the wrong people, and so they're you already know this. That their only tactic is ad hominem because they won't debate you in a situation where they're discussing ideas. They're not going to debate the information. They're going to just throw rocks and hide their hands kind of situation, right? And so. Just long story short, like the takedown on me was going back to that time period. They went back to some stuff where I went back to the time period of when the gay marriage had gotten passed. I literally was reviewing the Supreme Court case right after it happened. I was giving my opinion on. I was saying that this is they're basically gonna use the T part to drive a truck through a hole to drive a truck through some extra stuff that we're not expecting and whatnot, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what's been happening.
100%.
You're exactly right about that, and that's what commentators on our side have been saying. From Al Mohler to Denny Burke, and the list goes on and on. But so you were saying that, then what happens next?
Yeah, so I was saying that that if the LGBT community wanted to have like their own separate form of marriage and or like so not redefine marriage, so marriage can stay between a man and a woman because that's matrimony, right? That's a male and a woman a female coming together to have kids and all that kind of things, right? Like, so if they want to create something, I made a word of like homatrimony, right? For like, so homosexual unions and whatnot, right? I was supporting something like them creating their own word or civil unions and whatnot, right?
Right. Yeah. I remember when there was a talk about civil unions and, as sort of to almost try to placate these folks, but that's impossible because they don't just demand acceptance and tolerance; they demand celebration.
100%, and it seemed right. And the part that got me was like, okay, like if you're going to celebrate the thing, you should be wanting to create your own version of something versus trying to take over someone else's thing, right? Because the legal consequences, if you're saying that a same-sex couple is the same thing as another couple who can produce children. You've now legally blurred some lines to where like I said, it's a hole you can drive a truck through with that, right?
Yeah, this affects adoption agencies.
Yep.
This affects Christian schools, and really not just Christian schools, although a lot of times that's where you see the left hammering. This would affect parochial schools, Islamic schools, really anything like that. And it usually will start kind of with evangelicals as far as who they go first, but they're not going to stop there, as far as who they, attack and criticize and say, you can't fire this person, that kind of thing.
Like you said, any religious-based organization or schools, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be attacked on that period, whatnot. It does, like if your religion is anti that stance, like your stance is going to become anti-government. You know what I'm saying? And that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and they'll say, you're using your religion as a mask for hate and all that kind of stuff. And this is exactly what we've seen happen. And honestly, it's sad to say, it seems like it's only going to get worse. And then with the transgender stuff, we've seen a number of authors who have important, really academic leaning books on this subject have their work removed from Amazon, lose speaking engagements. And some of these folks are secularists. They're secular and they're leaning. They're just academics to say, well, look what's happening. Who's the one gal? Abigail Shire, I think, has a book that details what happens in these surgeries, and it's horrendous. And I mean, a lot of it, it's like, this is child abuse. There's some real perverse stuff. I mean, we're telling doctors it's okay to go in there and basically for no reason play with these children's body parts when they're at an age where they can't even own a gun, they can't even be in military service, they can't even drink alcohol, and then we're doing this to children and then putting pressure, to celebrate. And that's where you see videos of these little kids that they're paraded on these talk shows. Oh, look how he, which would really be a she, dresses and their style and their flair, and they're in these fashion shows, and it's a total sexualization of children. This is what's happening, and this is Jesus. Like, makes me remember Jesus, what our society is doing. Jesus says, hey, man, you leave one of these little ones astray, it'd be better to take a millstone around your neck, be cast out in the ocean. That's exactly what's happening.
Facts.
I mean, this is some bizarre stuff we're living in. And Hebrews Lights are the guys who are, using this stuff against these kinds of people, these kinds of like certain kinds of members of certain kinds of sects. So I'm not talking about everybody, but I mean, you've seen it too. Mm-hmm. And then, you were trying to add some like practical solutions to the problem, and they're going to turn it into something else. It's just bizarre. And even in the case with what they're talking about with me now, they're like, oh, Vocab's following transgender sites. The account I was following was anti the agenda. Because
can you explain the account you're following for a second? Because what was it, transgender divorce or something like that?
It's trans widow voices, I think, was the account. I had forgotten I even followed it and unfollowed it, but they made a big deal out of it. There was a time where I was like, man, this is the pressing issue. I'm going to really do everything I can. And whenever you see non-religious voices, for lack of a better word, who are allies in this kind of fight against insanity, to me, that's always been important. It's wild because these accounts are getting blocked. Recently, one got blocked called Gays Against Grooming. Gays Against Grooming is blocked on Twitter, last I knew. These are people who practice that lifestyle saying, don't groom kids and they're blocked. So they don't care like what other perspective or issue you have. You can be cast out real quick. Who was the tennis star that was a lesbian? And she said, no, keep women's sports, and men's sports. And they just totally canceled her. And this is a woman that was of the left back in the day. A lot of these guys are just unaware of that and don't care. They just like see a word and try to go for something. But this particular account, which it's funny, I never had even read much of the content until, it was the most I had ever really interacted with the content was when these guys started making videos about it and reading all these stories. That's when because I didn't pay attention too much. And that's why I unfollowed. I was like, oh, it's not really too much here. And I'm not really doing this too much anyway. But it's like, my husband is trying to transition, is trying to do this. And here's the way it destroyed our family. So this is the empathy argument of showing like the emotional impact and toll in a lot of ways. And they talk about this and it's really devastating, and that's what that was about. So these guys are just in a whole nother place with it. But the ones who do that don't care about truth. So you saying Dante did that to you?
No, 100%. So for the mere fact that I was willing to stand up for traditional marriage, like, I'm saying that guy flipped on me. But so I flipped it back on him and was like, when I was standing up for traditional marriage, you were out there pushing ancient aliens. So no worries. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what's true. And guys, look up, let me see what that. Oh, I remember the title of that Frank Turek book. In fact, it's funny. I had these uploaded as for members only, like old school things that I had on my YouTube channel that were already there. And with all this stuff going on, I was like, let me release these older interviews. Yeah. Frank Turek, correct, not politically correct, how same-sex marriage hurts everyone. I mean, my goodness, this is published in 2009, and I interviewed him shortly after that. I mean, even us talking about this, we might, he got fired from Cisco because of this, a company that he had worked for. He got fired because of it. And then Michael Brown is one of these voices that's really powerful in this issue back then and has a really, frankly, scary book. A Queer Thing Happened to America. What a long, strange trip it's been. That's 2011. And, these are things that I was talking about back then. And so that's where I haven't, changed. And, even this broadcast, I wonder if it's going to stay up from us just talking about this. But it's important stuff, especially when it gets, I don't know the words politicized, but the way these guys are doing it. That's interesting, man. I didn't know they had done that to you. That's quite fascinating. We're here to talk about the Pews, but then there's this other issue.
Well, yeah, real quick. I'm okay
with it. I'm okay with it. I'm like kind of shocked. I didn't realize Dante did the same thing to you. And that's where, man, Dante's not in a camp. Sometimes the way he acts like a camp guy with these kind of things, you know?
So here's the thing: is I'm somebody who believes Hebrew is actually on the pews, right? But for the mere fact that I have the nerve to believe that Arabic is also on the pews, it counters a narrative that they're pushing and whatnot. Therefore, I got to get dealt with, excommunicated from Israel, all kind of stuff and whatnot, right? And the whole point of me bringing all this up is like, I'm somebody like, so these are people who weren't willing to stand up and fight for traditional marriage almost a decade ago, right? These are people who are not interested in trying to understand. Like, so when you were I saw that you were I heard that you were unfollowed that group or whatever, or that page or whatever. Right off the top of my head, I'm like, okay, Vocab has kids, you know what I'm saying? Like any parent worth their salt, you know what I'm saying, is going to be paying attention to this kind of stuff, because like this stuff is getting pushed on children right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a big deal and whatnot. And real quick, I just want to put this out to the public. I'm not anti-LGBTQ, etc. You know what I'm saying? I'm a live and let live type person. I'm libertarian in my views and whatnot. As long as you're doing your thing over there, I'm doing my thing over here. I'm not tripping on you, fam. To each his own. I'm not mad at that. At no way, shape, or form. However, there's an aspect of this thing to where it's crossing lines, and that's what me and Vocab were talking about. Like, so for people who are religious in their beliefs and whatnot, there's an aspect to where this crosses lines and whatnot. And so, and this is why I'm going to bring this back into the pews, right? In the sense to where, so we're both people who are willing to confront society when we feel like we're being damaged by society and whatnot, right? And that's something I actually respect about you. Like, so I don't necessarily agree with how you go about things all the time, but I respect the fact that you believe in protecting your way of life and protecting your standard of living, etc., all that kind of stuff, right? So, for instance, like with the Islamic stuff, like with Islamicize me, I might not agree with everything you did in that series, but I also understand, like, I'm a Muslim or whatnot, right? But I also understand, like, I'm a Quranist, etc. I understand Vocab's talking to a group of people who literally are on some, like, let me reform a caliphate type of thing. Let me try to infiltrate some stuff and slowly take over a government and be go from a weak portion of society to a strong society and take it over and whatnot. So I understand he's addressing something. He's not just making videos to make videos or whatnot, right? Again, we can agree to disagree on the tactics or whatnot, but I can respect what he's doing in that fashion or whatnot, right? And in that vein, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. Do you feel like you took it too far in going to Kelly's place of worship, his church, etc.? Were you or were you just confronting an issue as you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, I am confronting an issue as I saw it, but I wouldn't deny. You know, I'm not trying to. How do I say this? I'm playing games, but I'm not trying to play games. What I mean is, I guess you could say it's a troll for me to stand outside and do the video. I get that. It's like, to me, it's kind of funny, but I'm not making threats. I'm not harming anyone. I'm not doing, it's because the video is not about that. The video is about this guy makes this claim. Here's a much more direct way to talk about it. It's like, well, you know, their church is behind me. But like nothing else is happening. I specifically went there when they weren't there, and they complained about that. But if I went there when they were there, then they would have complained about that too. I wasn't trying to bother them. I was trying to more make a point about the pews. And it's like, this guy is a pastor here, and here's what he's been promoting, and here's how he's been dealing with criticism. And, you know, he says he's such a busy pastor, but he had time last Saturday to file 14 complaints against my channel, none of which went through. And, you know, this is quite a job, because you have to do time codes and everything. And then, you know, we had to respond to it. So it's just a way to be like, it's like really just making the issue have to be dealt with. You know what I mean? It's where you're kind of forcing the issue, because you're like, okay, here's a bold thing, you know, they're going to talk about. But really, at the end of the day, the content of that video is just about Hebrew on pews or not. That's really what it's about, but I'm there because he's such a big promoter of it. And now they're trying to back away from it, but they're also trying to promote a new theory about what's there. It's like, well, make up your mind. Which is it? And I just don't understand this thing where we can put out anything and it's not criticized. I don't mind people criticizing in fact, anything I do. That's kind of the point of why you put things out. You want people to interact with it. In fact, you know, I was kind of disappointed for a long time. Like neither of my 2 books that I've published, or one that I was part of on the Trinity, there was no really in-depth Hebrew criticism of any things in there. Some people complained about the title and some other things, but there was never like a substantive review and interaction. I never really even got to interact with that. And I wanted like some legitimate, okay, because you want to improve and get better. And, that's a kind of a good thing, but that's not there. So as far as
duly noted.
Yeah. Hey, man, I hope so, man. I hope so. And, no one's perfect. So I'm sure there's things I could correct or fix in any book I've written. I didn't write the Bible. I just wrote an apologetics book, I'm just saying. But yeah, I understand it's a bold, irritating, annoying move or something like that. You know what I mean? But it's not really beyond that. And these things like they're trying to say it's equivalent to a cross burning. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre. Abu's pointed this out. Kelly and a lot of these other guys interpret any disagreement with their theories as violence. And that just shows me a really weak constitution and an immature way of looking at disagreements. And you could even say conflicts. And I obviously don't mean physical conflicts. And that's a shame. But I don't know if folks are going to change anytime soon, And honestly, with all these filings against the channel and stuff, it would have been so much better for them to not do that, because all that stuff, and then where they got the video taken down and I re-uploaded a remix version that was, more like obnoxious, if you want to call it that. It's like I wouldn't have done that, and we wouldn't be having this conversation most likely if they wouldn't have done all that. So they want it. They want it both ways. They want all criticism to be removed off the internet, but it's kind of like the it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, well, then people are going to do it more because the way you're acting, and the threats, even if they follow through on the threat, I'm like, okay, well, let it come. It's kind of like, okay, you do what you feel you have to do, but I'll do what I believe is right. And I do believe it's right to push this to find out what the truth is, and they just seem really bothered by that.
So are you meaning to tell me that Pastor Kelly's super secret service card, to where like he got the government automatically flagging videos for him, you know what I'm saying? Like that ran out and he's got to do it manually by himself now? And it's not going through when it happens?
That's what it appears. I mean, these guys have like literally tried every type of argument. I mean, like, we're going to sue you, we're going to take down your channel.
But we won't debate you. See, this is the thing. So this is why I personally had no issue with you going to the church, right? So first and foremost, like, you're a apologist, you're a polemicist, like that goes with your territory, fam. Like that just is what it is, right? We're living in the age where people are pulling up on everybody trying to make a video, right? I had no issue because you weren't defacing property. You weren't trying to hound nobody. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see you tapping on windows and looking in cars and like no, you were on the sidewalk. You know what I'm saying? Following the law and whatnot, right? Yeah, you were trolling 100%. But at the same,
I don't necessarily deny that.
Yeah, no, like 100%. And I actually agreed with David Wood's concept in terms of like, no, this is how you make this make sense. Like, you stand in front of the dude's church and you talk about it, like, because so this is people need to understand. Like, oh, leave Kelly alone. Kelly's somebody who went on Baran's channel and challenged people. Yeah, I'll take on all comers. Just show your face on camera. Like, in Vocab had challenged your boy to a debate on the Pews. It's like, no, I don't got to prove myself to you. It's like, well, hold on. You like, how are you going to say that and start challenging people, bro? Like, are you going to debate the thing or not? Well, me and him, like, we were building beforehand for a long time about the Pews and trying to get an understanding on stuff, right? And then once this PBS documentary came out and like one scholar started talking about potential like Arabic writing, it just, everything went dark, everything went crazy, everything went sideways. Like it like no longer did he understand. I thought Hebrew was on the Pews too. Now it's like, you're trying to push it. People are an Arab Muslim kind of. I was like, what? What's this? Like, what's this low level conversation of you? Like, if you speak Arabic, you have to be an Arab. If you speak like, you speak English, are we all British?
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. Like, even when I have heard Muslims make the argument about, well, that's clearly Arabic, therefore they were Muslim. I was never sold on that either. Mm-mm. Like, I think it's more likely there's Arabic than Hebrew, but I'm real unsure about that, and I'm just like trying to follow the evidence. I don't claim to be an expert in Arabic. It's because you're like, okay, let's look at this and we can do some discerning and look at this together, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't automatically mean, well, then therefore they're Muslim person. And the question, we don't really know if there's something written on the pews. We don't know who wrote it. People were out here acting like they would like know. I mean, I've heard guys talk about it and say, my ancestors wrote. What? Like, you don't know who? It's just such a it's a stretch, and it's really based on a lot of emotional elements more than factual elements. And I just, we're gonna have to be a little more objective with these things to really get to the bottom of them. And I don't know if these guys realize how bad this all looks now. Even fair-minded Israelites who do think they're Israel, they're looking at this and like, you guys invented whole people to not deal with this, and now you're saying, you're gonna sue, you're trying to get people's channel taken down. Like, what is this? A lot of people were, and behind the scenes, you see some of them admitting it. They like Will Brown has lost credibility with a lot of these guys. Well,
exactly.
And hey, anyone can make a mistake. So if someone said, hey, I don't hold grudges. I'd be like, okay, cool, let's move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
My bad. I repent. I won't make up any more false scholars in the future. Whatever, right? Or something like that. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. But it's like the opposite. It's like, don't mention my name. Don't say my name. Don't do this. Don't do that. But it's like, okay, are we actually just going to deal with the issues ever here? It's all about Vocab's attitude or this or that. I mean, truth be told, I don't know if he wants me to say this, but Abu, I'll just put it this way, and I'll let him sort out how much he wants to say. He did not put me up to it, but when I told him I was doing it, he contributed a fair amount to the script. And he can say more if he wants to. But what ended up being the script would not have happened in the way it did without Abu's contribution.
Yeah, I was like, he didn't tell me anything, but I could tell what came from Abu because I know what he covers when because we've talked about this.
Yeah, that script.
Yeah,
that script is honestly more Abu than Vocab. The script itself, and you can almost tell parts I added or things I took out that he said, things like that. Abu likes to wade into minutia. Sometimes I took a couple of those little things out, this and that, but it's really him. He was the heavy. And he put it together so clean and so quick. I was like, bro, thanks. Because I was doing another video that day, which I'm still working on editing, the Israel Hill video. And he came through in the clutch and just like, whoosh. And he even had stuff in there I didn't know about or hadn't heard of yet. And I was like, whoa, for real, And then I was like, okay, bro, let's do this. I will say though, when I told Abu, hey, guess where I am and guess where I'm going, I didn't see his face, but I will say I could sense a heavy smile. No 100%.
100%. So with bringing up Abu, I definitely want to talk about like just and clear up this whole identity claim, right? Like, so I actually heard you say on a channel recently that you believe that there could have been some Jews that came across in the slave trade, but it would have been like a negligible amount. Like it wouldn't have been a whole bunch, right? But you do believe it would have been some.
Well, I don't know. It's like there could be any people mixed in. And I guess if I was going to phrase it, I might be more careful. I might say there could definitely be potentially people who have Semitic ancestry who came over.
Okay.
We're not omniscient. I can't like eliminate any possibility, but I might say that about a lot of groups. Now, probably not every group. For example, it's much more likely someone who has some Semitic ancestry came over than probably someone who has I'll use a modern phrase, Russian ancestry came over, right? I understand that because of dispersions and things like that. But I mean, I just don't know. But that's different than like affirming an all-out thesis that really is arguing, in my view, for much more than you could get. But I don't see how I could say, I know that no one who came over in the transatlantic slave trade, none of them had any Semitic ancestry. That seems like a total overstatement. And I don't see why would someone, how would they know that? I wouldn't know. I don't know. I don't have any way to know. We're talking a lot of people over a lot of period of time. But that's different than, the broad sweeping claims that people with 12 tribes charts make, or people make in association with the Igbos. I'm still learning about that. But honestly, I think there's just so much overstatement. It's like, what are we really dealing with here? And I really feel a lot of it is 1 Timothy 1:10, man. endless genealogies. But it's interesting what he says which promotes speculation. I feel like that's what's going on. I feel like that's what's going on with so many of these conversations. But no, I would never say, I know for certain that nobody came over who had some Semitic ancestry. I just don't know how we could know that in that way. That's different than saying, these massive people blocks, though. I think the evidence strongly militates against that.
Yeah, I think you and I would both agree that the claim, just based off of genetic evidence, right? The claim that everybody that came off the slave ship is from the same descendancy is just absurd. I mean, just off of paternal descent concept, there's multiple different haplogroups that came off the slave ship.
Yeah, I mean that's a definite fact, and some of the details I think are probably lost to the, they're lost to the sands of time, for lack of a better phrase. There's just a lot we don't know. I don't know how we could know some of these things, but the claims that people make based upon some circumstantial evidence here and there, it's like, what is the need to overstate any element of the case or any semblance of a case? And it's just like, let's not overstate what any evidence we have gives us. Sometimes we're tentative, sometimes we're provisional, other times we're more confident or more certain. Like, for example, you said going back to the Pews, you said you do believe there is Hebrew. Like, do you believe that's a very certain that there's definitely Hebrew on those Pews? Definitely
no. That's why I say believe. Like, I can't confirm it at all. Like, so I'll say I believe there's possible Hebrew, right? But again, I don't think there's, from what I've seen, I don't see Hebrew phrases or words, but I do see potential Hebrew letters, etc. Right? But again, that even if there is, right, I agree with you and Abu that that's not enough in and of itself to make an identity claim, right? And so, for me, what's more important about the language on the pews is that the fact that the church, to me, is a national treasure for anybody who descends from the slave trade, because there's potential markings that come from East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, etc. It potentially has fingerprints all over from where all the slaves came from in one spot. And to me, that's just monumental and whatnot. And that needs to be looked at and examined and whatnot. And on top of that, let's say, so for instance, there's one pew where I believe there's potential Ge'ez, Hebrew, and Arabic all on the same pew, right?
In the same line or string of characters, or just on the same pew? Do you believe that there's a mixture of different letter shapes of Ge'ez and Hebrew on the same line of characters?
So like a ha, a sa, and Ge'ez. Well, let me just do it like this. Since we're talking, let me just share my screen. I'm going all out of order what I was planning on doing.
Oh, my bad. Well, hey, man, we can go back wherever.
No, bro, I'm freestyling. I'm not tripping.
I got you, man. Yeah, if you need wherever you want to go with it is fine with me.
No. You're good money. So you're familiar with the pew that Abu gave the potential rendering for La ilaha illallah?
Yeah, and I think some of the scholars.
Oh no!
Huh?
Oh no! Hold on, real quick. I do believe we have
finally there.
Oh no! My apologies to Abu's wife. I inspired the former crack addict to light the pipe. My fault. How you doing, Abu? Peace and blessing, brother, man.
Very good, very good. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I couldn't resist the urge to try to jump on. So, but please continue. Or if I could say one thing really quickly about we're talking about the church being a national treasure. One of the things that I find dismaying is that there are a number of people who have sort of revealed that if the pews can't be used in the service of an identity claim, then they don't care, right? Then that's it. Let's drop the subject, which is shocking to me, because I think that even if it was just English, right? Like, hypothetically speaking, let's say it's just English and they're lyrics to a song and there's nothing that can be used to settle an Israelite debate either way. wouldn't you want to know that, right? Wouldn't that be important? Like for me, to give a mild example, I recently found in a government document something that my father's father had said. It's like a 2-sentence excerpt recorded in a government document. And for me, it was huge, because it's from the grandfather I never met. It's a big deal. Like I can't imagine how people would treat this as irrelevant just because it can't settle like an internet debate. Like for me, I feel like people should continue to be interested in it, irrespective of what value it has to some identity debate. You know what I mean? Like if it's Arabic, that should be huge. If it's, even if it was Spanish or something like that, it should be huge and the discussion should continue. But I've always been surprised that people, will say like, oh, why are you dragging this on? Why are you continuing to explore this? It's a dead topic. Like, really? It's a dead topic? I don't know. Forgive me. Yeah, I think it should be important irrespective of what. Yeah.
No, 100%. And it's definitely not a dead topic for me because me and my people have been studying this since before we heard anything come out of that camp. We were dealing with this from August of 2019 when my good brother, Anonymous Hebrew, a.k.a. A Unity, a.k.a. J.P.Z., he went down to the church. He actually went down a second time recently. Looking for more stuff or whatnot, you know what I'm saying? But like, yeah.
Hey, wait, is that the guy that writes all those books?
No.
Or is it a different? Because there's a guy named Anonymous Hebrew who writes a lot of books I have in my library. Well, it's not him?
Not that I know of. Not unless Anonymous got something you want to tell me.
Maybe his name. Maybe he goes by Unknown Hebrew. I'm not sure, but okay, go ahead, bro. Okay. No, that's he goes by Unknown Hebrew, not Anonymous Hebrew. Okay, my bad. Different guy, I guess.
So real quick, I'm gonna play a clip. So Vocab said he had not seen the Cryptic Quest documentary. So real quick, I'm gonna play a couple of clips from that documentary and then get into this pew that I have on the screen real quick. So
make sure you say fair use.
Yeah, fair use.
Yeah, 100% fair use. But yeah, let me see which ones I want to play. I'm gonna play the ones right here. Here we go.
That's all.
What did you hear? What was said with Garfield and the documentary?
I actually wanted to address one thing real quick because I was actually.
Yeah, Garfield is here. You hear Abu Garfield?
Yeah, I'm here, my brother. Hey, peace and love, Abu. That's my fam right there, man.
Likewise. Good evening. Good evening to both of you. One thing that Garfield said that I actually wanted to touch on it because I was thinking of making a video on the plausibility of Arabic on a church pew because I saw an interesting comment.
Oh, wrong one, family. Hold up. My fault. Been a while. I think.
Good to see you, though, Boo. How you doing, man?
Very good, sir. Very good. Glad to be here. It's an interesting discussion.
Here we go.
Definitely want to hear what you got to say, bro.
Here we go.
Are you ready? Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm ready. Brother.
All right, come on. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Go ahead, bro. You got the floor.
All right. Peace and love, everybody.
I sent you an email. I sent you an email. Check your email.
All right, so this is Dr. Ephraim Isaac. You could look him up on, just Google him, just to know who we're talking about before I show the documentary, right? He's a brother that was born in Ethiopia. He's an Ethiopian American. He went to Harvard University. He's a scholar of ancient Semitic languages and civilization and African/Ethiopian languages and religion. He is the director of the Institute of Semitic Studies at Princeton, New Jersey, and the chair of the board of the Ethiopian Peace and Development Center. Dr. Isaac, listen to what he holds now. He holds a bachelor's in divinity from Harvard Divinity, a PhD in Near Eastern languages. Let me say it again.
That's right up his alley. That's right up his alley.
PhD.
That's his lane.
There you go. All right. So we're not going to go into anything else further about.
And he an Israelite? He Hebrew?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is, my brother. He can't get around that. So now let me share this documentary right here. Hold
on, Alton. Hold on. Y'all got to hold on.
It's called the Cryptic Quest. All right. Cryptic Quest. If anybody wants to look it up, as you can see, the video the brother sent me is unlisted because he sold the documentary. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, the University of Cincinnati, why would a scholar, a PhD Harvard scholar, fly down to look at the pews if it wasn't something major for them to review? There's been debates for this for years in the African American community. So now,
Mr. Backtastic said, "Say yeah, you ain't lying." Go ahead.
All right, hold on a second here. All right, here we go.
and in shape.
Make it big.
Many of them look alike. Ha, sa, ra, ri.
So all these letters are Ethiopian.
Yeah, that is Ethiopian.
Okay.
This is ha, this is sa.
Yeah.
And this could be na if it was straight like this.
There is now evidence to clearly show that some of the slaves came with skills of writing, which transcends the traditional models of illiteracy, albeit most were illiterate. In fact, most people from Europe and the West were illiterate in that.
All right, so that's the first 45 seconds. Let me click now to another section. All right, so people could see exactly what's going on. All right, so we are at 30. What is this? All right, here we go. All right, here we go.
In 1733, my fifth great-grandfather,
Turn it up a little bit.
Jewish immigrant from Frankfurt on Oder, came across to America on a ship with about 40 other Jewish immigrants to Savannah. At the time, Savannah was a bit of a wilderness. The Jewish immigrants who arrived there were actually trying to reach Charleston. In terms of just Savannah in general, those Jewish immigrants settled there, arrived there in 1733. So that's 120 years of Jewish presence with African presence in a place by the Civil War, which had something like 15,000 people as its population.
The Jews who came to North America, while they certainly wanted to retain their religious identity, also certainly in terms of an economic livelihood, I mean, they did want to acculturate to their surroundings.
All right, hold on 1 second, Barry. Let me just pause it for 5 seconds and let's play some more of this.
You're talking about a close-knit community where all strata of life interacted and overlaid and intertwined.
The diverse community in Savannah provided a unique situation where Black slaves and Jews were living side by side. Could this be a possible explanation for what we see on the side of the pews? Are there actually Hebrew letters mixed in with the Ethiopian letters?
Well, then that would look like a cursive top. As it is,
That's right.
as it is, it also, I have to see this closer up, but it also looks like a close of.
Mute your mic, they say, Garfield, whilst they talk. Mute your mic.
Okay. However, nothing else on this panel really looks like a Hebrew letter. When you have something that looks like a Hebrew letter, it's in a context of things that don't look like Hebrew letters. So that the issue is, again, the issue is not the individual sign. It's what the signs add up to.
So far, none of the letters, symbols, or markings seem to form words, which may imply that they had a different purpose entirely.
All right, give me another 5 seconds. Actually, I just text Alvin Elmore. He said he's at a video shoot because I wanted him to come on because he's the guy that actually filmed it. You know.
Yeah, he's more than welcome to come on.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
The use of alphabetic symbols in magic is very well known. It's very ancient. In Ethiopia, for instance, already in the 4th and 5th centuries, they were using decorative letters, not directly in terms of symbolic 3 or 4 words, letters, but in terms of a geometric figure. A lot of the early magic, what we call abracadabra, they are not complete words, but they are letters. There is one prayer that is Achida Sharachida Sharachida Sharachida. I mean, they use just a few of those words, and sometimes it may be just like ha 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 la 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 ba 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 ga 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 ga. This is, of course, the way of enticing the demon and defeat them.
All right. Yeah, man. That's it right there, bro.
But that does fall along the lines of what Mr. Dante said he ran through with that Cambridge stuff right there. That might actually explain. Well, let me see what y'all say. That might actually explain some of the confusion. Where's he at? Go ahead. You want to say anything else while I'm looking through these comments? Washington must got another email. As soon as I put your name in, it came up from 2 years ago unless you got a new email. I couldn't touch the paste because I don't got a message on your phone. Go ahead, Garfield. You got the floor. What you got to say on the whole thing?
I would just say that what we can do is go with what the scholarship has said. So if Dante has something where someone else has said something, and then look at what everybody who has actually done the work, and then draw your own conclusion. That's how you work with a scholarly from a scholastic point of view. But I do appreciate Dr. Ephraim Isaac being a part of this and giving some context. You know, he's saying there's no words there, but you have people saying like alphabetic letters in a chant like of some sort of magic. But the beauty of it that I got from it, that I'm glad that I knew about this, is that there are Africans that could write in the Americas before writing English.
That's right.
Shows that
Europe was still in a lot of ignorance.
Right. That's what the scholar said too. So that's another.
I got one last clip, and so this clip comes from, I believe, towards the end of the documentary, where it actually shows the conclusion of what they're talking about in terms of the language that they're finding on the Pews, etc. And so this part here is where they actually talk about finding a potential shorthand version of the Tetragrammaton on this particular pew.
The markings on the pews do not form words, but they perform spiritual symbols of invoking spiritual power for the preservation and protection of a downtrodden people that were subjugated under a very oppressive and cruel system of slavery.
There is a sect in Ethiopian culture that practices esoteric knowledge. They are called the Depteras. Some perform exorcisms, while others engage in charms and astrological practices. Depteras are usually chosen from families of other Depteras and are trained from childhood in traditional medicines along with mystical healing.
What we have observed with the Ha-Sa, following very often those two Ethiopic letters, are the two small lines. Those two small lines are symbolic of the abbreviation for the name of the Most High, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh.
Of course, yeah. The Tetragrammaton sometimes is shortened as Ya and or Yo. Of course, the letter Yod also in many Jewish interpretations often represented the Ten Commandments also. So Yod has a symbolism of the weight of the law.
Seeing that we have the Ha-Sa symbols on the pews in Savannah, Georgia, followed by this abbreviated symbol for the Tetragrammaton of the name of the Israelite deity Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, is in itself remarkable in the sense that this has to be the writing of an ancient heritage that managed to somehow survive chattel slavery and persist with a record of a connection of a scattered people from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia.
Yeah, so that was their conclusion from the documentary.
Well, I'd love to hear what Abu, if he's still, is he still here or is he had to go?
No, I'm still here.
Yeah. So what do you think, Abu? I'm just now seeing this.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. Me personally, I wasn't, it wasn't enough for me to conclude that language appears on the pews. I think nonetheless, it is interesting to see Ephraim Isaac and stuff like that, to at least affirm letters, possibly in the use of magical spells. I think that was interesting for the objections to the Arabic, and this is actually relevant to something. I don't know if you guys see Rudy Heinrich is in the live chat, and he had asked if anyone's brought up the use of like Arabic and magical spells. In the polemic against the Arabic reading of one of the pews, it was pointed out that there's like 3 lines that haven't been explained, and if you were to treat it as Arabic, it looks like 3 alifs in a row. And so the same people who attacked that and said, "Oh, you get like Brown said, you got to explain everything," and Kelly endorsed that, and Benaya endorsed that. They were happy and excited about what happens in Cryptic Quest, where F.A.B.C says that maybe it's letters being used in magical spells. The interesting thing is that sort of thing of a series of 3 lines. You can see that in specifically West African magical uses of Arabic letters, like Grigri and stuff like that. And I've shown that before, where you'll have like 3 alifs in a row and 4 alifs. So there was a sort of inconsistency there. I'm not convinced, but if we go down that road, it's interesting how it buttresses the case for Arabic. I don't know. Forgive me if that's a little meandering there. I could elaborate if needed.
Right, 100%. So one of the things I appreciate about the documentary, and you might want to get it, Garfield, and see if you can get a copy of the documentary, Vocab, because it's actually really interesting. So there's a lot of cultural context given in terms about the Ethiopian connections to the church and whatnot, in the sense to where Ephraim Isaac talks about Ethiopians being taken in the slave trade. He also talks about Jews being in West Africa and whatnot, but he talks about Ethiopians being taken in the slave trade. And that points, like, a lot of people don't know that there's like 543,000 people that were taken from East Africa and ended up into the slave trade here. So they were pointing towards that. They were pointing towards the original name. You know what? I got my presentation right here. Let me just go to it right quick. Give me a second. So the original name of the church was the Ethiopian Baptist Church of Jesus Christ. And it when Anonymous went down in 2019, he took some pictures of the windows and let me know that the tour guides were talking about the fact that they had Ethiopic crosses on the windows and whatnot at the bottom you can see it on the bottom right there, the equilateral crosses and whatnot, and that eventually they switched over to more modern crosses, etc. And that also when you go on tour there, and I will say this, shout out to Pastor Kelly and them and whatnot for actually bringing this out to the people. And the documentary they were part of, Reclaiming the Throne, they showed this. When you go on tour, they actually have what some people believe to be like a replica, of the Ark of the Covenant, etc., made out of acacia wood. They literally made it out of acacia wood. So this is something that like we see in East African forms of practice, like amongst the Ethiopian Christians and amongst the Lembites, where they're making wooden replicas of the Ark concept. And so that all landed credence with the Ha and Sa concept. The West African Arabic, I mean, that's obvious. There's more examples of Arabic amongst the slaves than you can shake a stick at. You know what I'm saying? What was intriguing to me was the possible Hebrew concept and what he was saying in terms about the single letter concept. And hold on real quick. So for me, I actually when Anonymous went down there, Anonymous said he potentially saw a whole bunch of coughs on a few pews and whatnot. And so I was able to get a picture of one of those right quick. And where are we at? Man. And so something I postulated is that this potential pew here might actually represent what Ephraim Isaac was talking about in terms of single letters and repetition and whatnot, right? Potentially being a repetition of coughs, etc. And it might be a potential example of like Judeo-Bantu, for instance, or some form of West African Judeo-Arabic, or it could have even come through the East African aspect of the slave trade. Just like we have some slaves that were taken from like Madagascar, etc., who were said to know Arabic and Hebrew, etc. So I agree with you guys that from what I've seen, I don't see any words or phrases. But in terms of cultural context, I don't rule out the concept of potential letters, etc., whatnot, in repetition on the piece, etc. And on top,
real quick about the what's proposed to possibly be multiple kafs, that Hebrew kafs. This again takes us back to the question of the orientation of the pew, because if you rotate that 90 degrees to the right, it begs the question: why not interpret it as multiple? Is ha, you know, like ha 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 ha, like that. You know what I mean? And of course, there's other options as well.
Where's my showing that?
Judeo-Bantu. How would you define that? Judeo-Bantu.
So wherever we see Jews going, they typically blend their language with whatever language they're going to. Like so, Judeo-Arabic, for instance. And so, if there's a Jewish population in West Africa, like so in the documentary, Ephraim Isaac talks about a well-documented population amongst the Kingdom of Ghana, etc. Right? Let's say that, like, so if there's a population in West Africa that's of Jewish descent, it stands to reason that they're going to make even amongst the Lemba, for instance, right? They might make like a Judeo-Bantu kind of a concept, right? So,
what's your opinion then of Yiddish?
In the sense of what?
Well, would that be Jews blending their language with German?
Yeah, Judeo-German.
Yeah.
I think he would say.
100%. Yeah, it'd be like German written in the Hebrew script. Yeah.
Well, I'm just you. If people understand the potential implications of a position like that, you might receive some heat.
Well, it's well known. Like, so for instance, like I don't deny that Europeans can be descendants of Abraham, etc. So one of the things that happened with me, Vocab, was like on my channel, like, I got flagged by Dante for actually re-airing one of my an interview where I went on his channel and explained this, that I believe that the nation of Israel looks like all four corners of the earth and whatnot. Right?
Man, I didn't know that Dante didn't like you this much. I didn't realize that he went after you so hard as well.
Oh, they were loving me for a minute, bro. But
yeah, and Teo lumps you in together with they list you amongst those who are trying to give their heritage away because you think that carrying Ashkenazim may descend from Jacob, possibly, you know.
Yeah, and what's funny about that is when you actually get into this claim about sola trail, right? And Ladino being on the pews, etc. Abu, do you have time for me to play the second half of your video where you're talking about carrying?
Yes, please. No, I got some time. Go ahead.
Okay. Because this becomes very important to understand in terms of people making the identity claim, right? So just like Vocab was saying, if there's Arabic on the pews, it doesn't make people Arabs, right? And just like they're saying, if there's Hebrew on the pews, it doesn't make somebody an Israelite, right? Well, if there's Yiddish on the pews, right, or let's say like the Hebrew came from someone who was Ashkenazi, whatnot, right? Well, does that make everybody in the congregation Ashkenazi at that juncture? Let us find out.
And why couldn't that Ashkenazi be himself be an Israelite, and so on down? Exactly. It's funny that I remember when what's his name, Benaiah, referred to them, the Sheftals, as Ashkenazi brews, and somebody in the chat was like, "What's an Ashkenazi brew?"
Yeah, but I really want people to pay attention to this part here from
Jewish coffee.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. But I'm gonna mute my mic and I'll play this clip right quick.
Documentary titled Cryptic Quest, which is actually about the markings on the pews at First African Baptist Church in Savannah. You see, in that documentary, there's an interview with the local Savannah historian, Karen Wortham, who actually has ties to First African Baptist Church. And Miss Wortham mentions that there was a descendant of a prominent Ashkenazi family attending the church. So let me first play a clip of her discussing that person, right? So this first clip will run just under a minute, and permit me to say fair use.
Here we go now. I find out that there is a member of First African Baptist Church. His name is Jackson Benjamin Shefthal. Now, the Sheftals are some of the richest Jewish people. They're from the Jewish family. Jackson Benjamin is the son of Benjamin Shefthal. Also, he's the grandson of Mordecai Shefthal. Mordecai Shefthal is the person responsible for really the building and putting the strength together of the Jewish temple, which is Mikvah Israel in Savannah, Georgia. His mother, Mariah, is a free Black woman at this time. She never marries Benjamin Shefthal, but Jackson Benjamin is raised basically as a little Jewish boy because he takes on this name. But when he becomes a grown man, now he is found to be on the roll of First African Baptist Church.
Okay, so you got that so far, right? There was a person attending the church who was a descendant of Mordecai Sheftall, who was a prominent Ashkenazi gentleman living in Savannah. Now, I'm going to play one more clip from the documentary, and listen closely as this local historian from Savannah, Karen Wortham, who has connections to the church, listen closely to how she states that she thinks a person who possessed the knowledge to make the relevant markings on the pews had to be someone like this descendant of Mordecai Sheftall, or Benjamin Sheftall, whomever, this descendant of the Ashkenazi Sheftalls, right? So this next clip will run for about 43 seconds, and again, fair use.
The pews are in the balcony. They are made into the balcony. Many people did not even go in the balcony. And when you read into the history of the balcony and slavery, whites did not go into no balcony. So if there was any slaves that had the knowledge of reading, they were literate, that was one of the biggest kept secrets that you would have found on a plantation or among the slaves. They kept that as a secret. So someone who actually had the knowledge and was given the ability to learn this language, write this language, had to be someone like Jackson Benjamin Sheftall.
Now, I'm not the one who said that, right? That was a local historian in Savannah, Karen Wortham, who said that. Now, I personally do not think that we need to invoke some descendant of a prominent Ashkenazi Jew to explain the markings, as I honestly remain skeptical that there's any coherent language in those markings. Right? Honestly, I don't think there's Hebrew or Yiddish or Aramaic in those markings, right? But putting my skepticism aside, nonetheless, it is interesting that if we were to seriously entertain the idea of Yiddish on the pews, you have a local historian proposing that a likely explanation for the markings would be a member of the church who descends from Ashkenazim. Think how those points fit together. And this also got mentioned in passing when Benaiah Israel appeared on Sister E's channel back in April of 2021 in the video you see on your screen. And I'm just going to play a couple of quick clips where that was alluded to, and the combined footage here will run for about 50 seconds, right? So here we go. And again, fair use.
Why even the Ashkenazi brothers that are out there listening, I want to show you that even you have some stake in this church. Even you owe it to your forefathers to defend what the forefathers said they were, venerable fathers in Israel, right? So let's go through it. So Benjamin Sheftall was one of the brews that was on the first ship, Ashkenazi brew, right? Now this is what you're looking at on your screen is the First African Baptist Church, and you're looking at the deacons of the First African Baptist Church. And if you notice, there was a deacon named Sheftall. I'm gonna let that marinate for a while.
At the church.
A deacon of the church. Not at the church, of the church.
Of the church named Sheftall.
Sheftall, and he is related to Benjamin Sheftall. He's a great grandson of Benjamin Sheftall, the first.
So at least one descendant of local Ashkenazim, and with these different names, maybe more than one, but at least one local descendant of Ashkenazim served as a deacon at the church. And now I want to show one final clip, right? This is from an interview with Karen Wortham on the Boom Church panel. And this aired back in January of this year, of 2022. Now, Miss Wortham is literally asked if there is a connection between the Sheftalls, between those prominent Ashkenazi Jews in Savannah, between the Sheftalls and the markings on the pews. So let's listen to what Miss Wortham says in this clip. And this clip will run for about 1.5 minutes. Fair use.
What is the connection between, I think, Benjamin Sheftall, the church, and the Hebrew writing on the pews?
The only connection I found between Mikvah Israel, which was organized by a gentleman named Mordecai Sheftall, and First African Baptist. Well, Mordecai Sheftall had a grandson named Benjamin Sheftall. Benjamin Sheftall, after the death of his first wife and child, because she died in childbirth, both of them did, he ended up being kind of like smitten, that's what I'm going to use, smitten with a young lady from First African. Her name was Mariah. And Mariah at that time she had jumped the broom with a gentleman by the name of Oliver. Well, Oliver happened to have still been a slave, but Mariah was a free woman. But in order for Benjamin to get Mariah in his house, he ended up purchasing Oliver. When Oliver came, Oliver was positioned outside the house, Mariah was in the house. Mariah ended up getting pregnant. When she was pregnant, she was pregnant from Benjamin. She ended up with a child by the name of Jackson Benjamin Shefthal. The Jewish community did not want the mulatto child to be named in the Shefthal name, but Benjamin Shefthal refused to listen to them. He named the young man Jackson Benjamin Shefthal, him being one of the wealthiest mulattoes in the city of Savannah.
Wow.
Okay, so there you have it. Now, I'll leave that for each viewer to make sense of, right? To reach their own conclusions, their own interpretations. But at this point, before closing this video, I would like to summarize what we have covered so far. You see, first, Kellyanne Brown promoted an email from a secret scholar who said that he did not think Hebrew appeared in the markings, but he was open to the remote possibility that maybe one pew had.
Yeah, that part doesn't connect with it. Yeah. So with all that there, well, first of all, Boo, do you want to say something about that? Boo is probably playing daddy right now. Okay, no worries. Vocab, do you want to comment on that real quick? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the well goes deep on this. You know, I hadn't seen some of this stuff before, so it's very interesting, very fascinating. And I see there is the book that you can get, the history of the First African Baptist Church. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it's online, but you know, you can also get looks like some physical reprints.
Yeah, and you can download the entirety from Google Books. It's available in its entirety.
Yeah, see, I'm looking at it now. It's fascinating stuff. So, you know, it's all very interesting, and the church is clearly historically important, no matter what conclusion you come to about what's on the pews or not on the pews, and is an important, significant historical landmark. Doesn't have to have special writing or anything like that on the pews for that to be true. So very interesting stuff that ties in with a lot of unique history for sure. That's all I could really say at this time.
Yeah, some context I'll give to it again is like, so if so what's interesting are the claims being made on the backs of this Hebrew on the pews claim, or I'll say cursive Hebrew, because I don't believe there's cursive Hebrew on the pews. I believe if there's going to be Hebrew, it's going to be some form of block stuff. Again, just letters, not. I haven't seen anything that would go to phrases or words, etc. Right? Not like the Arabic. So with the Arabic, there's potentially 3 well-attested phrases in Arabic.
Isn't that incredible that you know, while there's a certain crowd who pretends like there's no case for Arabic, the reality is that Arabic is the only language so far to not only have coherent, well-attested phrases proposed, but even to have them proposed by multiple scholars independent of each other. You know, and so it's like I'm fine with people being skeptical about the Arabic, but for people to pretend like there's no case for Arabic and then turn around and pretend like the case for Ge'ez or Hebrew or Aramaic is stronger is shocking for me. And forgive that interruption, but
oh no, and what made it infuriating for me is at that juncture, when you're eliminating Arabic at all for no other reason than a knee-jerk reaction, the last thing that Kelly ever said to me on the phone ever was, "You're not going to tell me that Christians wrote a verse from the Quran on those pews," even though like you understand it, but like that verse is it's not controversial in terms of your belief system. Like Boubacar Diakité said in the PBS documentary that the people who wrote the Arabic might even been Christian themselves. And what's important about that is that
religion as a continuity.
Yeah, and so what's important about that is so Boubacar Diakité is from Mali, right? And so in the Kingdom of Mali, they have a history of there being Christians in West Africa prior to colonialism and whatnot that were converted to Islam in like the 11th century and whatnot. But they talk about them still being a Christian kingdom and whatnot. So you have someone from Mali who has a cultural understanding of Christians in West Africa prior to colonialism, right? Talking about, yeah, these people might have been Christian. Like that's really important to understand and whatnot. So just to what's amazing about this is like these people keep throwing African scholars under the bus, left, right, and center, right? Like, so Boubacar Diakité from Mali, gone. Like, you can't trust him. A Harvard scholar, can't trust him, right? Ephraim Isaac, right? The pews he's saying are potentially Ge'ez. They're saying, nah, wrong. Flip that upside down. That's take grasp of Yahweh, the bass voice, Israel, you know what I'm saying? And that's written backwards. Don't worry about that. They're taking people like Sylvia the Oof or whatnot, who's documenting the fact that in Savannah, Georgia, the first time the Gullah Geechee language is written down, it's written down in Arabic and it's used to write the Gospel of John. Right, so they're throwing history out the window to force fit a claim for the mere sake of identity, right? And that can't be tolerated because, again, like I said, that church it's a national treasure for anybody descending in the slave trade. And I'll even say this: let's say you're a Christian or whatnot, right? That church, like if you're an African descent Christian in America, that church should be important to you, right? Because you potentially have African Christians coming from East Africa, potentially African Christians coming from West Africa, potentially with the Bakongo script, right? You potentially have African Christians coming from Central Africa and Angola and whatnot, right? You potentially have again, you potentially even have, let's say there is Hebrew on the pews. You potentially have like some Messianic Jews in the joint. You feel what I'm saying? Like there's a lot to sift through with this, but you can't really get to the bottom of it all if you're trying to force everything through this narrative. Oh, if it can only be cursive Hebrew, and if it's not cursive Hebrew and sola trade with that, then you're attacking the whole nation of Israel and whatnot, right?
Yeah, and I agree, but I got to dip out pretty soon here.
All right, I can pinch it.
Well, I mean, you're the heavy hitter, though. You know, you're the cleanup batter, man. We know. Nah, but Orthodox, thanks for having the conversation and being open to good dialogue. And I hope there can be more of that for more segments and quadrants. And I get it if people don't want to talk to me. I actually understand that. But maybe they'll at least talk to Abu, hopefully, you know.
Facts. Appreciate your time.
No time, no doubt. God bless. Talk to you later.
Peace.
So
have you
ever seen the C-SPAN clip of the woman? There's a woman on C-SPAN talking about the pews, proposing that there's a Dinkra on there.
Yes, I have. Yeah, and that's why I take the view of every pew needs to be. So I've been saying this since the first conversation we had on this, right? Is that every pew needs to be looked at individually, pew by pew, because there are people who came from West Africa who did have scripts that were available at the time, like the Adinkra and also like the Insipidi. And we even see cases of some of that in the Caribbean where some of these slaves also came from. So we need to, again, we got to slow that down, right? But it can't get slowed down if we're just looking for cursive Hebrew from Spain and whatnot. And I'll keep telling people this till the cows come home. One of the reasons why I pound the table so hard, like why I don't expect to see Sola Trail on those pews, is my mother's people are Anusim from those same people, and my mother's people have been in the Americas for almost 500 years, etc. Right, and there is not a single stitch of Sola Trail found amongst her people at all. So it would be fantastic for me to expect it to be coming from West African slaves. It would be a fantastic idea in the 1800s, no less.
And there is. What I would say is there is a question of, if we're using even scales, like I think, like, for example, they said that, Arabic was incredibly rare amongst slaves and the West African diaspora in the Americas. This was an objection that I believe Benaya raised, but that does raise the question, well, how much evidence is there of solitreo use amongst that same community, right? Like if you're going to measure the likelihood of Arabic appearing on the pews based on how much Arabic there is outside of the pews, I would think there's far more examples of Arabic being used, than there is solitreo, I would think. I'm fairly confident about that.
Yeah, and so something I think people need to take into account is, me and Abu both did the same thing. He didn't think Arabic was on the pews, but yet he went and checked his premise. I didn't think Sola Trail was on the pews, but I checked my premise. We both contacted scholars in those fields and got their information on it and presented it to the people without bias, right? So again, one of the reasons why I take Arabic on the pews is like Abu keeps saying, multiple scholars independent of each other have talked about 3 well-attested phrases on the pews. And again, Abu has no issue saying that, and he's someone who he's saying that he believes there is no discernible language on the pews. Like he's willing to tell you, there's people out here saying that I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. including certain Christian apologists. I remember when you were on Clubhouse, Faithful finally said it publicly. What he had been saying privately, he thinks I'm flat out wrong on the denying Arabic on the pews. So.
Abu went out and reached out to people, high level people, and they were like, "No, I think that's Surah 114 ayat 3 all day," right? Completely shot down what he was saying, but it was like, "Let me show this to the people."
The gentleman you have on your screen is particularly interested because Benaiah, there's a little clip that he put out where he's walking through Savannah. He's in Savannah, and he mentions Boubacar Diakite, and he says, "Oh, he's a scholar of Arabic, but he doesn't have any background in Hebrew. What we need are people who have backgrounds in both Hebrew and Arabic." Joffrey Khan would be an example of that. He's someone who, he's the Hebrew chair at Oxford. He has a long history of not only studying Arabic, but even studying Arabic within the Judeo-Arabic, and Solitreo. He's done stuff on that Hebrew written in the Arabic script. This is the scholar who's covered all of that. So he's someone who's quite relevant in that regard, And they've waved him off, It's like somehow I corrupted him, I led the witness on, is how Kelly put it.
Apparently, you got big bags of money for everybody, Abu. I'm still waiting for my check, by the way.
Well, what Kelly said was that because I sent highlighted pews, because I sent an unhighlighted image and a highlighted image, he said I led the witness, and he sort of insinuated that this is grounds to waive this person off.
Now, what's funny about that is so when it comes to Dr. Dr. Kirshen, I actually sent him both highlight. What always got me about that is so they made their own highlight versions of the Pew, right? And there was even one version to where Kelly had made a rendering. Do I have it on here? I'll look for it in a second. Where he made a rendering of the Solitreo on his own, right? He just hand drew it and whatnot, right? I sent Dr. Brian Kirshen the hand drawn one in yellow, right? And I sent him your highlighted one in red, right? And that's what he commented on. So Dr. Brian Kirshen is also important to note because he's a social linguist. And he was specializing in the Spanish language, where he was going into Jewish text in Spain and whatnot. But he's also he can deal with the Hebrew, but he can also deal with the Arabic in the sense that he reads the Al Hamiado text and whatnot. So he can recognize the Hebrew script and the Arabic script and whatnot. And he was what's amazing to me, Abu, is that off first glance, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, that looks like Arabic," off the first glance, and then they got to look.
Yeah, he said the markings to the left and the right of the portion that Kelly highlighted looks like Arabic. And for me, that's huge because that begs the question of the greater context. Because obviously now you have multiple proposals for that portion in the center, but the Arabic reading explains more,
And so here's what I really want people to understand, right? If there was actual Solitreo in that church on the pews or whatnot, and you have people who are literate in Solitreo, like Dr. Brian Kirshen and David Bunis for that matter, right? They're like I was saying, I asked Dr. Brian Kirshen in an email, is there any examples of Solitreo in North America at all? He was like, not that I know of. You know what I'm saying? So this is not something that scholars in this area would want to walk past. This is something they can hang their hat on and make a name off of for the rest of their career, particularly a young scholar like this man here, right? He's going to want to be like, "Oh, what? Solitreo? Yeah, that's exactly what that is." And start making all kind of papers about it, writing books about it, all kind of stuff. But that's not what happened. They're like, "No, that's not what it is. I don't see any smoke or fire."
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, I'm somewhat at a loss for words on that one, but yeah, that is interesting though. No, I got to look into that. No Solitreo in North America. Huh? That's shocking. I would have thought there was lots, but oh well. Not Ladino though. There is some Ladino. I've seen printed Ladino in the Ashuri script. That's for sure. But
I think there's some stuff from Brazil, but nothing from North America that I know of as of yet.
Yeah, I have a colleague. He showed me. He's from Peru. And his grandmother was a Jew from Turkey, and he showed me a picture of her gravestone. It has, the square Hebrew letters, and I was telling him, I was like, this is actually Ladino. It says stuff like Estrella and all that kind of stuff, And he was like, oh wow, So yeah, there is certainly square Ladino or Ashuri Ladino. Oh, but go ahead, see what you got on.
No, you're good. I'm just gonna go through your guys' positions right quick since vocab better run off. So y'all were talking about like medullary rays naturally appearing in the wood, etc. And if I leave one out, let me know.
That definitely came up as a possibility, and I have a video on that where I show that like I pull up a picture of some medullary rays and I like sort of read some Hebrew into it, and read some Ladino into it and so forth,
Yeah, and I definitely think there's at least a couple of pews that the medullary rays is a definite, like you could make that case for it, right? It seems pretty obvious. There's a few pews that it just looks like it. I don't agree like that would be the case for every pew.
No, I agree. Something now, clearer pictures are coming out now. Like people on Facebook that aren't involved in the debate at all, just people who went on a tour and took pictures and posted on their Facebook page. Like if you go to First African Baptist Church on Facebook, they have like all the posts that people like when they're checking in at the church while on tour, and clearer pictures are coming out. And now what it really looks like now that you take a look at some of these pictures, it looks to me like now, and I'm not making any claim as to when this was done. So I'm not claiming this was necessarily done in the 19th century or if it was done after, but in some of them, it looks like a type of varnish or shellac was put on the wood. And then while it was still soft or moist, someone it wouldn't be hard to do this, to sort of gently made markings in that. Like it looks like patterns are sort of like pathways are made, it's I could send you one picture in particular, but I would have to step away. It would take me like 30 seconds, so I might disappear for a minute, but there's one that really stood out for me in that regard.
Oh yeah, I can definitely talk for 30 seconds if you need.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. And so forgive me, I'll let you know when I'm back on. I'll send it to you on Facebook.
So yes, sir. So I definitely don't think that medullary rays are on all the pews, but there's definitely a case for them to make on some of the pews, right? There's enough repetitive See, this is the thing. There's not just markings on the pews. There's repetitive markings on the pews, right? So there's certain symbols that you see repeating on the pews. And so that at the very least is signs of intelligent design. So I take the repeating markings definitely off the medullary rays naturally occurring in the wood column, even though it's definitely there for some of the other ones, right? And with the repetitive markings, it's gonna that can still play into the somebody was just scratching on the pews or making markings or whatever until you identify what they are, right? So I have no idea. I have no issue taking things through a step-by-step process in a process of elimination to see what makes most sense in this case. My man's still looking for the picture, I think. Yep. And so another view that they had was the concept of a case of pareidolia, like seeing the face of Mary on a grilled cheese sandwich. I definitely think that it's possible to read into markings whatever you want to read into them, right? I definitely agree with the Boo on that concept. And I don't disagree with the concept of using language as your gold standard, right? So without words or phrases, I believe that their position is the markings are open to interpretation, etc. And they're going to use the words and phrases are the gold standard for finding out what language is. Now, I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. That's the gold standard. What I'm proposing in terms of the letters concept is not a gold standard. It's more of a silver standard, right? So the concept of Hebrew is twofold. It's not just a language. It's also a script. So just like Arabic in itself is a language, it's also a script. And I can use that script to write multiple languages. So when I'm talking about a script, do I, at that juncture, do the same criteria remain as it does for a language? I don't think so. I think you can also use cultural context for such.
Yes, what you have on there, that for me, that by the way, I sent you the 3 images that stood out for me. But regarding what you have there, and forgive me if I missed something, I think it's significant because it does bring into the question of if someone's going to claim language, or if they are going to claim letters, which are sort of like decontextualized, then without the context of like a larger phrase, you realize that these markings can be interpreted as a variety of letters. So for those who don't realize, on the you have 6 different images basically of the same markings, and they're being interpreted as different letters. So for example, at the bottom left, it's the 2 chets, which is what Benaiah proposed, and then on the bottom right you have Sa and Ha, which was proposed by, actually that's in the bottom middle, proposed by F.A.B.C. But then of course, as Ge'ez letters, and then of course you could propose Latin letters, Cyrillic letters, other Ge'ez letters up like in the top middle. And in the top right, it was Bunis who hesitantly proposed that maybe a shin is there, and a shuri shin is what he had in mind. And so you see how when we're just looking for individual letters without the surrounding context, it seems the possibilities really start to expand. But forgive me, I sent you those 3 images where stood out. And unfortunately, because I'm on my phone, I'll probably need you to zoom in to figure out which ones are significant. But there's one where there's because some of the pews have these very thin lines, like a series of thin lines. But one of the images I sent you, the lines sway, like they go back and forth, almost like a winding road. And it's clearly deliberate. So let's see. Yeah, I don't know if you can zoom in. I'm going to try to zoom in on my phone on this. I think this might be it. Let's see. I'll wait for you to zoom in.
I can't zoom in more. It's not letting me. Oh, it's hating.
Oh, see if you can download it then. Maybe because it won't let you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. I didn't recognize it. I'm going to do it. So I need you to cover for me right quick while I do this.
Yeah, so these were interesting to me. These are new images that came up. And I found these, again, when you visit the Facebook page of First African Baptist Church, they have the posts from people who are checking in. And again, these aren't people who are involved in any sort of debate. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 of them might have an interest in the subject, but mainly they're taking pictures of the church. And I was zeroing in, of course, on the pictures of the pews. And, there's some very high definition pictures now that are coming out from people checking in while at the church, checking in while on tour. And so getting a clearer look at some of this stuff. And it's quite interesting, Also, the quilt is interesting. It's unrelated to discussions about the pews by and large, but the quilt is also interesting. There's a lot of people who post pictures of the quilt, and there's some pretty interesting designs in the quilt as well, including a windmill that it looks, and this is going to sound controversial. I'm not trying to say anything controversial, but there's even what would be called like a swastika on the quilt. And I don't mean that as any sort of Nazi association. It's not twisted to the side like the way the Nazis was. The sort of more angular square swastika was used by a variety of cultures, around the world. So, but it's interesting that it seems to appear in the quilt as well. But
and again, that's still, I believe that they take those markings back to like Nigeria, just like with the 9 patch on the ceiling. Like Amir Jamal Tawari was talking about, he believed that was connected to northern Nigeria, etc. So again, this church has fingerprints or potentially has fingerprints from all over the slave trade on it. I just need a little bit more time.
Okay, no problem. Maybe I can. I'm looking at the live chat. I noticed Terrence Jones asks, "What's my YouTube channel?" I don't know if he sees my name in the chat, but it's just Abu Hamad Al-Masihi. He should be able to click on my name if he sees it in the chat. Or just, I guess, if he puts Abu Hamad or something like that, it'll come up. Or if he puts Pews Yiddish, he'll probably find my latest video.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, like I woke up to that video like, oh, we're doing this today.
Yeah, it was. I fear that people are going to misrepresent it. They're going to go out there and say, "Well, Abu's saying it's just Yiddish or something like that." But so I tried to be very clear with the disclaimers, but that never stopped anyone from misrepresenting things before.
Oh,
So
I'm definitely going to misrepresent it. I'm gonna break it down like, what I'm saying, like this is a whole hit piece on so you're asking Nazis, huh? I'm totally out of going to misrepresent. I'm all kind of misinformation right now.
But the question that I don't expect our friend, our beloved friend, the good doctor, to answer it. But I think that if we were to have a conversation about, his proposed readings and other proposed readings is, like what distinguishes a particular reading as Hebrew in particular, right? Like, even if you're willing to agree that you're looking at Hebrew characters, there's still the question of, what language would be there, if any, because clearly, here we go. Looks like we got something loading up. And yeah.
Second.
No problem.
No, I can't do it in here.
What?
It's not letting me zoom in on my own joint. Okay, I'm just gonna go straight to the pictures then. Okay. Give me a second.
Nonetheless, that was a fairly good shot. I don't know. Those are some of the latest pictures that I've.
Hold on, yeah, there we go. There's my zoom.
And if you can see it, maybe that's good enough. Like some of them.
You need it bigger than that? I got all three.
I got
all three on one.
Sorry.
Nope.
No, I mean, I don't see anything yet. From
I'm not because I'm not sharing it. My fault.
Oh, okay.
Look at me dropping the ball. My fault.
Let's see.
I zoomed in 100%. I can go more if you want me to.
Oh, I know. I guess this is good. Like, for example, the middle one. First, with the middle one, one thing that you'll notice, like the characters look almost painted on. Like they almost look like brush strokes. Like, you know,
right? Exactly.
How it's thick in certain parts and then thin and almost fading in other parts. Like it looks like brush strokes almost, but it's not. It's not paint on top of the pew. It almost looks like while the varnish was wet, somebody moved through it. You know. Which is interesting to me. But then, bear with me 1 second. Let me see if I can pull it up on my own end, because it's from here. I can't see it, but if I zoom in, I'll get a good sense of it. Okay. Let me go back. So, yeah, the one on the right. You see the one on the right? I don't know if you can see it, but the pew on the right, the sort of left half of it. Do you notice how there's those very thin lines that wave back and forth?
Yes, sir.
That how do you think they would make those markings? I get the impression that a very delicate sort of tool was used, almost something like, I don't know, something like not quite a fork, because it would need more prongs, more teeth, but it looks like a multi-pronged, very thin tool, just sort of gently swayed back and forth through the varnish or through the shellac while it was still wet. You know, that's the impression I get while looking at that. The way it sways back and forth.
100%.
So it gives me the impression that some of these markings were made in a very malleable and almost a soft surface, you know? So I thought that was interesting. It was sort of insightful. It's not conclusive in any way, but yeah, I find that interesting, you know, and a lot of it does look like they look almost like brush strokes.
Yeah. I gotta share it again. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's, again, a lot of investigation has to be done into what's on the pews, because we know roughly who made them in terms of the group, but not like specifically who made them, right? So it could be a whole bunch of stuff, and we know for a fact that there was, when you look into the Gullah Geechee language or whatnot, there's multiple examples of a bunch of different tribes. So it could be anybody making this stuff. So even if it's Arabic on the pews, like what kind of Arabic is it? From where? From who? You know what I'm saying? If it's Hebrew, from where? From who? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's anything, from where? From who? But
yeah,
the beautiful thing is for me, the beautiful thing is you have the opportunity to actually potentially go find those things out from looking at the pews and whatnot. And I would love to get a look at the other side with the other 40 pews over there. You know what I'm saying? But they're still anonymous said they still weren't letting people go check out that side when he last went. And real quick, going back to this.
Let's see.
I was just going to show a couple of other pews right quick.
So another possibility, this is a crazy idea, but I wonder if, now I don't know anything about shellac and varnish and paint, and I don't know what sort of material is on the outside of the pew, because it obviously looks like the wood is lighter and then has a darker material over it, like a varnish or something like that, a shellac or even a paint. One of the things I'm wondering is it something that can be removed with some sort of a substance, like, hypothetically speaking, I'm not saying this happened. I'm just like to give an idea of what I mean. Something like alcohol or rub or nail polish remover. Like if you put that on a brush and went through over the surface of one of those pews, does the darker surface disappear easily? I have to wonder about that. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You wanted to talk about what you have on the screen here?
Oh yeah, I was just going to talk about the fact that there's repetitive. There's markings that repeat on different pews, etc.
Definitely.
And so like that lends to a whole bunch of different things that we need to slow down and sift through. Like, is that language? Is it a trade language? Are these phrases the same phrases? Are they two different phrases with different markings, etc.? Like if they're phrases at all, right? But if nothing else, I can look at this and tell like there's something intelligible there that's in repetition. So I know that this right here is probably not a good example of a medullary, right? And it's not it's not pareidolia because I'm seeing repetition, right?
Well, just to be clear, the pareidolia comes in even with man-made markings. Pareidolia can come in, like insofar that we can make connections that aren't there. That's what I mean.
Right, and so I'm not making I'm not making an assumption as to what they say, but I'm saying like it's not pareidolia in the sense where like I'm looking at something that's repetitious. You know what I'm saying? I'm not making up the fact that these symbols look alike. In the picture, you probably can't see the picture, but I have it underlined and read the parts.
No, I can see it. I can see the underlining. Yeah.
But yeah, yes, sir.
I see. There's a question in the live chat of I think where the chat on StreamYard is pulling from both Debate Talk for You and your channel. But
Yes.
Robert M asks a question: what would be the point in writing the individual letters versus complete words? That's a great question. I wonder that myself for those who propose that, but as was shown in the documentary Cryptic Quest, which Moore showed a clip of, what has been proposed as a possibility is something akin to magic, something like a magical formula. We're just using individual letters as sort of, in repetition. Like certainly, that's happened in a few different systems,
Yeah, and so one thing I would like people to recognize. So at the time in West Africa, like Arabic was the lingua franca, and even amongst like people in East Africa, like let's say like with the Lemba, right? They had a secret language that they were using, but they weren't writing it down. They believe that it's either Hebrew or something close to Hebrew, right? So by the time of the slave trade, I'm making the assumption that if people have any knowledge of Hebrew, it's not going to be in depth at all, right? It's going to be something probably very reminiscent of what they used to know, right? So something like this repetitious thing here, right?
Yeah, certainly magical uses could probably survive longer than full literacy. Obviously, that would be fair.
Yeah, and even in Namet, like so in West Africa, like the concept, like most of these people are coming from like a Sufi Islamic part of West Africa, right? So the concept of dhikr or chanting something on repetition is not foreign to the area.
Yeah, certainly not the Sufis. I mean, how many Sufis have you met who they'll just meditate on who for like an hour? Who.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I need to find the right one. Hold on. So you're familiar with the concept of like the Hebrew alphabet being written, potentially written in this, I think, is it the Psalms?
Yeah, was it the Psalm 118 or 119? I forget. That each section begins with a Hebrew letter. Is that what you mean, or are you talking about?
Yes, sir. And so, like, I believe it goes in like 4-letter repetition. Like, so it'd be like 4 sentences that each start with the one letter, like Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. But you know what I'm saying?
That I'm not familiar with. But it certainly does exist in rabbinic literature, for example, in Kabbalistic literature. You'll see that, where you'll see like a long stretch of like the same letter. Yeah. And again, even in the Arabic that uses let me rephrase that. Arabic talismans that use magical talismans that use Arabic. Like if you look on the Wikipedia page for Grigri, I don't know if you want to pull that up. It'll look like Gris, Gris, and it's specifically West African forms of magical talismans, and they show one that uses Arabic lettering, and it's like repetitious, like a series of alifs and stuff like that, and they're doing it in West Africa, so that's interesting enough.
How do you spell it?
So Gris.
All one word or separated?
I think it's separated. I think it's separate, and it's pronounced Grigri. I think the S is silent, if I'm not mistaken, because it's from Francophone Africa, even though they're using Arabic.
Yes. Okay.
You found it?
Yep.
Yeah. See if you see the image of the talisman. It'll be like a beige talisman with black text.
Hold on.
Look for the Wikipedia page because they have a great example. Or maybe this will help. Yeah, what's that right there? The gray one.
No, let me. I looked at the top, but I didn't see. There we go. There we go. Just go down a little bit further.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that right there. That thing on the right. The one I was gonna say, the one underneath it. So this is just some sort of a leather packet of some sort. But that image there. Yeah. Zoom in on that. So it's clearly using Arabic text.
There we go.
It's clearly using Arabic text, and it looks almost like numbers, like almost like Roman numerals. But you'll see like there's like letters in isolation. There's like 4 alifs just right next to each other, 3 alifs. and stuff like that. So that's interesting. That is an example of that. And this is what I was talking about earlier, that, they were talking about, there's like these 3 straight lines, right next to each other. And, and that was never explained by anyone who's proposed an Arabic reading for that particular pew that is proposed, that it says Ilahi Nas. And so Will Brown said, you have to, if you're going to say there's Arabic on this pew, you got to explain everything. But the thing was, it can't be explained in terms of coherent Arabic. But since they themselves opened the door to the possibility of, by echoing F.A.B.C, to the possibility of like magical use of letters, hey, there are real examples of that in West Africa, where you might just have 3 lines or 4 lines, in a row, just as sort of like a form of a magical talisman, And it's interesting that this is specifically a West African item here that you're looking at.
Right. And I do believe that you can find these talismans amongst some of the slaves. I haven't seen any, but I've heard of talismans being found.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think even the Wikipedia entry says that the practice of Riri, I think that's why it has this French pronunciation, that it's sort of made its way to like places like Haiti and stuff like that,
Yeah, so. What was I going to do? I was going to do this one here. So real quick, I'm going to share Psalm 119. And someone was asking, like, why would someone who do like a repetition of letters or whatnot? So something I present as a possibility, like, again, understanding the culture of West Africa and the concept of like they could, or like even this magic concept, right? And also understanding that so in the history that I do, that in West Africa, there's Christian populations, Jewish populations, Muslim populations, people dealing with African tribal systems, etc. All in around the same areas and whatnot, right? So there's a lot of mixing and blending. Like, so again, when Anonymous went down to the church, some people talk about the concept of a trade language between the Hebrew and the Arabic there, which is very plausible, being that there's people like Omar ibn Said who are said to have come off the slave ship speaking Hebrew and Arabic, right, from West Africa. But real quick on this cough part. So in Psalm 119, it's some people surmise the concept of there being the alphabet written in terms of how it goes. Like, let me go to the top real quick so you can see this. So again, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, etc. Right. So going down to the cough part. So from, as I understand this, people make this assertion based upon the fact that like the letter of each sentence, etc., verse starts with what each letter talked about here. So in the cough section, to me, this would be like a potential shorthand version of like a prayer. So people who pray with like prayer beads, etc., like even my Catholic grandmother, she pray with prayer beads or whatnot, right? Like, so a lot of people, like they'll do something to her, like they'll repeat something so many times, and then they'll throw the bead down for one rung, etc., and go about their business doing another set of whatever, right? Which happens quite a bit in West Africa, whatnot, right? And so to me, what's interesting about this is like the 4 potential coughs, and also the way that the coughs, the letters are written in the Psalms, but what the cough could say, because I'm thinking about this right here coming from someone who's going through slavery or oppression, etc., etc., etc. And in this section, it says, my soul fainteth for thy salvation, but I hope in thy word. Mine eyes fail for thy word, saying, when wilt thou comfort me? For I am become like a bottle in the smoke. Yet do I not forget thy statutes. How many are the days of thy servant? When wilt thou execute judgment on them that persecute me? The proud have digged pits for me, which are not after thy law. All thy commandments are faithful. They persecute me wrongfully. Help thou me. They had almost consumed me upon earth, but I forsook not thy precepts. Quicken me after thy loving kindness, so shall I keep the testimony of thy mouth. So to me, there's a possibility. I'm not saying it's definite or you can confirm none of this. There's so much stuff that you have to sift through with this. It's not even funny, but it's possible that those are shorthand versions of a prayer, or what people could remember from their language, etc., and all this kind of stuff, right? But yeah. You still there? Did you have to go?
No, I'm here. I'm actually, I got my Tanakh open. I'm trying to look at the Hebrew text. Also, what's fascinating, I think you can see it there in the edition that you had on Blue Letter Bible. When you click on their on the verses where it'll show the Hebrew text, at the bottom it shows the Septuagint text. I think it also shows, and this isn't in all Septuagint manuscripts, unfortunately, but some Septuagint manuscripts even do transliterations of the letters. So you get like these ancient Greek transliterations of the pronunciations of the letters of Nun, Kaf, Samech, etc. It's fascinating. I know that's a little bit off topic, but
So yeah, there's something else that I wanted to show, right? Like something I deal with a lot is the concept of cultural context. And so I agree with Vocab and Abu that words and phrases are going to be the gold standard of establishing a language, etc. Right? But I don't always have to look for the gold standard, right? That's not how scholarship works, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, on a silver standard kind of a concept, I have no issue applying cultural context. So just like if I was to see like A.B.C. apostrophe S on written down somewhere, that's not a phrase, that's not a word. But as someone who speaks English, I know that means the alphabet. That's the ABC, right? In this context here, I don't know if you can see this or not, Abu.
Yeah, it looks like it's teaching how to use the letters, because it looks like I see like Aleph with with the different diacritics under it, and then Bet with different diacritics, like a like a Patach and a etc. And Segol and so on. That's what it looks like. It's a little blurry on my phone, unfortunately, but yeah.
But these are obviously not words, right? This is more like this is almost
it looks like it's teaching someone the Nikodot, the pointing to use to vocalize letters.
So would you say this is Hebrew or no?
Oh, I would definitely. Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it could be used for two different languages. It could be used for Hebrew or Aramaic or Arabic. But yeah, it's certainly Hebrew characters. Undoubtedly, Hebrew characters being used to teach the Nikodot in that case.
Does the menorah on the right give any cultural context?
Yes, of course, and the 6-pointed star, and if I'm not mistaken, there might be an 8-pointed star next to the bet with the wa.
So right, so whereas I agree with the argument, like there's like the words and phrases you're not going to see potentially for some of this stuff. But however, I do agree you potentially could see the script for some of this stuff, right? And I think that needs to be understood as a different argument and whatnot.
Agreed. Well, I'll say this. If people are going to go for that standard, it's certainly possible, right? Like, like I could put an X on a piece of paper and intend it to mean something specific. And, someone saying, well, I don't see coherent language in that doesn't disprove my intentions, right? So the only thing I would say is that skepticism remains justified, or at least understandable in those sort of contexts. But the other thing I would ask for people who go down that road, and this does not apply to you, but it does apply to people like Kelly and his crowd, that if you're going to have that sort of standard, I would say apply it consistently, because I think there is something very unfair where, like, for example, they'll say it's been proven that Aramaic is on the pews, and they'll say, because we have an email from an anonymous scholar saying some of the markings look like Aramaic characters. And it's like, if that's the standard, then Arabic has been proved too, because it seems like everyone agrees. Anyone who's honest agrees there are markings that resemble Arabic characters, like individual characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, it seemed, the only thing I would ask is that if people are going to take this approach, that they'd apply it consistently. And I do think that crowd has not, something that I've said for a long time is that they unwittingly admit that the case for Arabic is stronger by virtue of the fact that they hold Arabic to a much stricter standard, than they do the other languages.
I wouldn't even say a stricter standard. I think they hold it to a fantastical standard. Like, again, like you had
yeah, like for example, they're pleased with Yusuf Salhi saying, someone who's like fluent, a native speaker of Arabic wouldn't write it this way. And like, so that immediately begs the question, well, would a native speaker of Hebrew, someone who speaks Hebrew as their first language, write Israel with 5 alephs and 5 yods and a zayin and no aleph and no sin? It's like, the standards are so uneven, where it's almost like you need like perfect literacy for Arabic to be present. But for Hebrew and Aramaic and Ge'ez, it's like, just, a resemblance to a letter closes the door. It's like, it's done. We proved it.
Yeah, and so what do you do when there's 3 well-attested phrases, but then there's also these potential letters, right? This is what I'm saying. Like, you have to throw history out the window. Like, so like what you're talking about, like, so if Arabic wasn't their first language, would they write it like that? Well, okay. Was Arabic the first language of a lot of people in West Africa? No, even though it was the lingua franca, right? So like, it's the fact that you see 3 well-attested phrases, right? One being a possible ayat from a surah, like a well-known one that you can also find in literature amongst the slaves in multiple examples, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's also, because it's part of the shorter suwad, it's amongst, like, that's the interesting thing. The phrases that are being proposed by these scholars, by Diakite, by Jafri Khan, they're all like phrases that would be at the beginning stages of like someone learning Islamic phraseology, right? Like, something like ilahi nas within the context of, Qul a'udhu bi rabbi nas, maliki nas, ilahi nas, right? Within that context, like ilahi nas is like one of the first like pieces of Quranic material that a child is going to learn. And Bubakar Diakite proposed la ilaha illallah. That's going to be like one of the first bits of Islamic phraseology that a child is going to learn. And so even a non-Muslim child at these like Quranic schools and stuff like that in West Africa. And so even if someone just learned a little bit of Arabic and then got removed from that environment and, was completely ignorant of the language beyond that, could still, some of the first things they would learn are precisely the things that are being proposed for these markings, like ilahi nas, like la ilaha illallah,
100%.
And that's a heck of a coincidence, right? Like, of all the things that would be proposed for the pews, it's like the phrases that would be the first things to be taught, like Surat An-Nas is like among the very first things that like people, that children who learn Quran, they learn those shorter suwat at the back. They learn Surat Al-Ikhlas, they learn Surat An-Nas,
And again, even more important, the first time the Gullah Geechee language was found to be written down was in the Arabic script, but it was in use for writing the Gospel of John.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a huge one. And that's so relevant on so many levels. It's relevant on this concept of, where people want to treat Arabic as strictly the domain of Muslims. It's relevant to Benaya trying to say that there's no connection between Gullah and Arabic. You've already covered in detail his handling of Lorenzo Dow Turner's book. And, so to find out that the first piece, the oldest known piece of Gullah, written Gullah, is written in the Arabic script rather than the Latin script, that's huge, By the way, I'm sorry, forgive me. I'm looking in the live chat. Robert M, and I think this is from the Debate Talk for You live chat. He says, what's the most coherent, complete word amongst the pews, whether Arabic or Hebrew? Do you want to share your thoughts on that? For me, it seems like the most likely one is An-Nas, as part of the phrase Ilahi Nas. That seems plausible, the phrase Ilahi Nas. It's plausible. I mean, I'm not convinced entirely because, I don't know if you remember this. I had emailed Suhaib Webb and he came back. He was one of the people who said, I don't know. I don't see anything. And I think, Suhaib Webb is one of these guys who came out of the 90s, who experienced like the Muslim community in the 90s. And, he probably remembers, there's a bit of pareidolia there where people were seeing Arabic in places where there's not Arabic. Like the most, I know when you spoke to Faithful on Clubhouse, he made fun of it, but it was a real phenomenon in the Arab world where there were people, as part of it, they were saying it was evidence of a conspiracy theory. People would hold a can of Coca-Cola up to a mirror and look at the logo, and the logo in the mirror, reflected backwards. It did sort of look like a sort of ornate, roundabout way of saying, something like La Muhammad, La Mecca, like no to Muhammad, no Mecca, something like that. And so I that's why I'm skeptical, but nonetheless, I think Ilahi Nas is probably, to me, it's even more plausible than La ilaha illallah, which is what was proposed by Diakite, because in terms of La ilaha illallah, the Allah part is sort of broken up, But whatever the case, but go ahead. I don't know if you want to answer that, Robert.
And what's funny is like, so for me, I think the La ilaha illallah part is the most
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
readable phrase there. And what's funny about that is like, so on this exact few, like when Anonymous showed me, I was like, okay, I think like I can't read the rest of it, like, bro, I think I see Allah right there. Like in 2019, that was the first thing I said to him. I was like, I think a blind Muslim could see Allah right there. And he was like, really? And then you came out with it, like, so you came out and like, we're just, hold on, let me show all your stuff right quick, because you came out and just started making all kind of proposals, right? Like in terms of like how you would do something, right? So you put out the Ilahi Nas, and people were like, oh yeah, it could be that. You put out the La ilaha illallah.
And not only that, one of the reasons why I went with Ilahi Nas is because I knew a guy who looked at it, and he said that he was like, man, it looks like it says An-Nas right there,
Mm-hmm.
And then I was looking, I was like, yeah, it does, and then
you hold on, you know what? Let me just quickly show yours right quick, and I'm also going to show. I'll quickly show from Surah 110. I'll show Omar ibn Said writing Surah 110 and writing a very almost the exact same word
Oh no, it was. He definitely wrote An-Nas. Yeah, he definitely wrote An-Nas. Yeah.
But so yeah, there's this. There's you put out a potential proposal for again. This is the same pew.
Very broken, but like just to say, very very broken. This is super sloppy. What's being proposed here? Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a good example as well, because this is the same pew that the Ephraim Isaac was saying potentially was the Ha and the Sa, etc. Right. Again, also with the two little dots following, right, and the three lines following. You put out two. You put the Rasul and the Rasail, I believe.
Yeah, Rasail. But again, this is super sloppy. If it is, it would be. But then that takes us back to this thing. What Kelly said. He said, what if these are being he doesn't say this for Arabic, but he says it for Hebrew. He says, what if these markings are being made by slaves who are under duress and they're sort of disconnected from their culture. So he literally said all the rules are off the table, as if to imply that when it comes to Hebrew, you got to make room for the fact that these people could have a very shaky connection with their ability to write it. But once you put that on the table, then it does open the door to like this sort of like childlike approximations of Arabic, like what you just showed, where it's very broken up and very sloppy, if that's what it is, Yeah,
I gotta find this this version I have where I have that Surah 110 right quick. I'm looking for that right now. But yeah, I definitely think that even like I agree with Ilnas is like definitely like when you see this fam, like you'll understand like why he's saying this is close to it, because and I'm not saying it's the exact style, because there's multiple styles of Arabic that come from West Africa, etc. Where is it at? But it's real interesting because you can compare this to someone who actually wrote this at a similar time period in Arabic, and not too far away in South Carolina. Okay, where are you at, sir?
And also, there's another thing that I've brought up, because I've tried to consider the arguments for and the arguments against, and then the counter arguments to the arguments against, and it's funny, like I haven't seen anyone else do this. Like for me, one of the biggest concerns about proposing Ilahi Nas, right, is that if that text says Ilahi Nas, the Aleph and Lamed in An-Nas is written very differently from the Aleph and Lamed in Ilah, right? They're like completely different. They're totally different sizes, different styles. So that becomes an argument against Arabic. But then I found, what I would consider the counter argument when you look at that. And now keep in mind, it's neater. It's more. It's obviously written by a more educated hand. But the slave in Haiti, the Mandingo slave who wrote out the entirety of Surat Al-Ikhlas, he does like a thing where one aleph will be very small and then another aleph will be like to the sky.
Yeah, 100%. And so I use that as an example of the potential trade language between the Hebrew and Arabic. And I'll get into that. I'll make a long video.
Forgive me for interrupting you. Third line from the top. An-Nas is right.
Oh, yeah. I'm about to make it even better. So here we go.
Yeah. Look. Yep. Yeah. It's undoubtedly An-Nas on the left. Yeah.
And so we have something from Surah 110 on the left and something potentially from Surah 114 on the right. Again, and these would be the shorter surahs that would be learned, etc.
And let's talk about what was it? Was it Samar? I think it was Samar Ali who pointed this out, or it might have been Maham Mirza, or maybe it was both of them. But it's definitely Samar Ali. Like what is Surat An-Nas opens up with the imperative kul, right? Say A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, right? Say that I take refuge in the Lord of humanity, Maliki Nas, Ilahi Nas, the Lord of the God, the King of humanity, the ruler of humanity, or the God of humanity. So what's the context of that? Muslims typically use that often in Samar Ali talked about this in like stressful situations, right? You're aware that you're putting yourself in the in the refuge of the Lord in those stressful situations. So it makes perfect sense that of all the things that a slave with maybe they had a Muslim parent might remember being taught. They might remember bits of Surat An-Nas, of that, of because they themselves are in a stressful situation, So that's also an ironic coincidence,
There's so many possibilities with all these markings. So it has to get super slowed down, and so that's why that conversations like this are imperative, because you can't just gaslight this into it's only one thing, and you can't look at it and how dare you look at it any deeper, because no, there's a lot of layers to this onion, fam. I'm gonna stop sharing this and go back to the one I was on.
I see people in the live chat are saying it does look close. At least for a NAS, it does look close.
Yeah,
that was a great picture to have up. That's a good one. I would recommend maybe that juxtaposition. You should like post that into a community post or something, or on Facebook somewhere, you know, so it can be referenced. Or I'll save a screenshot later on. That was a good comparison.
Yeah, 100%. I'll send it to you. Mm-hmm. And I gotta double check, but I'm pretty sure I brought that up during my No Secret Scholars
yeah, I think so as well. Yeah,
videos.
Although marathon, right?
Yeah, those are super long though, so I got to make a shorter version of that stuff.
Definitely, you got to chop those up. That was great. That Christmas Eve. I remember Christmas Eve. I'm like sitting with family by the Christmas tree, and I keep clicking back. You had that like 5-hour show, you know.
Had to do it, man. Had to
like unwrapping the gifts. I was like, I'm looking at my phone. I was like, okay, let's do it. And I put the phone down. Like I was like, oh snap! He used the phrase "good," the good doctor. Oh, let me put this down. All right, yeah, let's unwrap these gifts.
Oh man, I'm about to. I'm trying, man. I got so many memes that I'm trying not to unload right now because I'm trying to be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you've already seen some of them.
Yo, definitely.
What am I looking for? I was looking for something. I forgot what it was. But that's what I was gonna do. I want to give people credit where credit is due before I end the show, though, right? Because there was some good information that did come out from that side, and it actually led me towards some good research on my own and whatnot, right? So like one thing that I definitely want to give Benaiah credit for was bringing out some of the information from the church itself, right? In terms of going into the church literature and talking about certain claims that they were making, right? So something that they talk about in the church literature is this concept of people having the title of fathers or mothers in Israel, etc., the community being called Israel or whatnot. That's coming straight out the church history, right? This is something that I actually took straight to Garfield's channel and defended this information, right? I think I actually got that clip, but hold on. I might just play that joint right here. See, or did I take it off? No, I took it off. But yeah, I literally went and defended this information because this is the church where the people themselves are referring to themselves as Israel. But I had to agree with Garfield that it could have been in a figurative sense, right?
Well, because it was before dispensationalism, and that's something that stands out for me. That's why I had put out videos of like Catholic priests being called fathers in Israel, Freemasons being called, because sort of the rise of dispensationalism has created this atmosphere where now it's very common to think of Christians separate from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
But I think before the rise of dispensationalism, it was much more common to think of the church as Israel,
Agreed, 100%. So I couldn't argue with Garfield, like with the fact that this could have been a figurative concept, just like Abu was talking about. And he documented it very well, right? And you can see this all over the place in the Americas from multiple different phenotypes, right? But he rightly brought out the church's information, right? So I appreciated him bringing that out to the people. I don't agree with the case they tried to build on this one little phrase, right? So even in the documentary, like Reclaiming the Throne, they try to say that this was an example of the people in the church claiming that they were Sephardic Jews and Portuguese Jews, and that, like, again, that's a step too far. You're stretching it way. No one's saying that anywhere in these documents. At most, you're going to hear them say something about like mother or father in Israel, right?
What's interesting? They tried to make a great deal out of the fact that there was a particular sermon that's quoted in the book that expresses hostility to Catholicism, to Islam, to Freemasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that if I recall correctly, that same sermon expresses hostility to Jews, to disbelieving Jews as well. Like when it talks about like the problems with Masonic lodges, it says, you can't praise Jesus on Sunday, and then during the week you're going to sit next to Jews and pagans, like right. As if to say, like to express disdain for disbelieving Jews, And so and it uses sort of Jew as like other, clearly, I thought, like, if they're going to make hay out of that one sermon, which, funny enough, the book says wasn't really representative of the church anyway, but if you're going to make hay out of that sermon, it also seems to reflect negatively on Jews as well.
No, 100%. And again, that's people trying to force things into a narrative to where it doesn't fit, right? If you're going to talk about the thing, talk about the whole thing. Give me all the details, right? And that's a very important detail, right? They weren't just taking shots at Muslims; they were taking shots at Jews as well, right? So it's, again, be consistent. We don't have to do it. We don't have to agree. Again, me and Abu don't agree on this thing, but we have no issue being consistent. Like, he can tell you, I don't believe there's Arabic on that joint. I'll tell you, I believe there's Arabic on the joint, right? And we're not going to fight over the thing, right? But we're going to consistently give you our reasons for why we believe such. And there's nothing wrong about that. And it should be expected. Like, if you're going to put out your ideas in public, this should be expected. This should be expected, particularly when Vocab rightly puts it in his video, and I think he put in a couple videos to where there's a rapper on the Jude 3 project talking about, he claims to be an Israelite based upon this stuff here. The fact that
he said it was one of the biggest things, if I recall correctly.
Exactly. So this is also why it can't be just a dead topic or whatnot, because there's people who are wrongfully making identity claims on this information, not knowing that it's false information, not knowing that it's false, right? And so it's like, and I'm not mad at the church, because they seem like they don't know what way to go with it, right? Like they seem like whoever makes a strong argument, they just put whatever's up at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that they're always.
I don't doubt the church's sincerity. I would say that.
Yeah, 100%. Because how do you know? How do you verify any of this stuff? You really can't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like you can to a certain extent, but like, again, no one was there. We weren't there when the stuff was written. We don't know what their intent was when they wrote it. All that kind of stuff, right? We can just, at this juncture, all we can do is speculate with integrity if we're going to do it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the one, with integrity, using proper methodology and whatnot, right? Like I'm saying, I got no issue. I'm not going to be offended because Vocab and Abu talk about medullary raising in the wood. Okay, that's very possible, and I can show you instances of the wood where it looks just like that. However, I'm going to rule that out when I'm looking at these repetitive markings I can see on multiple pews, right?
Mm-hmm. And so too with the scratches and the brush strokes, which
we exactly,
looked at,
100%, right? Like, so if I see like a potential tetragrammaton on one pew, okay, like that subject that could be two doubts. But if I see it repeating on multiple pews after a certain set of letters, like, okay, I have to take that more serious, right? I can't say it's confirmed, but I'm going to look at that more serious than I was before if it's just on one pew, right? It's just honest methodology and whatnot. And it's a sad thing that this conversation was taken down the road that it was taken, because again, this church is a national treasure for anybody. Oh, let me go through one more thing real quick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's interesting that certain people wanted to just shut down the whole conversation, like stop discussing it, you know?
Yeah, I wanted to give them credit also for bringing up the fact that the potential wooden altar that's potentially, or the wooden altar that's potentially a replica of the ark is actually made out of acacia wood. A lot of people didn't know that, and so I appreciate them bringing that part out also in the document they were part of, right? But to that end, a lot of information was not just it wasn't just misinformation or disinformation. It was just straight fabricated information, right? And that's not gonna cut it, fam. Like, no one should respect that. And you definitely don't get to pound the table in special plead and say, like, well, don't talk about this and don't talk. No, fam. Y'all were out there saying everybody's name for the longest, still saying people's names, still making claims about these pews that are damaging to honest and sincere people. Honest and sincere people are taking your supposed information, supposed research like it's gospel truth, and it's sad for them because they're not double checking. But B, a lot of people don't got the time, energy, or information themselves to double check this stuff. They're looking for you to be honest and have some integrity in the information you're presenting and whatnot. Not play the hand is quicker than the eye game with them, right? Again, but why is this important? This is important because this church is potentially, it's not potentially, it is a national treasure for anybody who descends from the slave trade, because it potentially has the fingerprints from the East African side of the slave trade, the Central West African side of the slave trade, the West African side of the slave trade, etc., all in one spot. You potentially have a Bakongo cosmogram, Arabic, Hebrew, Ge'ez, etc., all in the same place. Just on this one pew in particular, just this one pew, the potential implications of this one pew, if they're being Arabic, potential Hebrew, potential Ge'ez, and we don't know, were they all Christians? Were there some Jews in there? Was somebody a Muslim? Like you potentially could have somebody who's a Christian from West Africa, a Messianic Jew, and a Christian from East Africa, marking something all on one pew, fam. Like, and is it definite? No, not at all. Is a scholar backing that? No, not at all. But it's potential, and it deserves to get looked at. But if I'm gonna force this in, it's like, oh no, there can't be any Arabic there. Like, I'm doing disrespect to the people who potentially left these markings there. That's no good, fam. Because again, these are the people we descend from. We owe them to everything we can to understand what is it that they left us. But not only that, this is something completely different, right? In the sense of cultural unity, these are people who didn't have potentially the same beliefs and whatnot, right? But they learned how to work together for their own preservation and benefit and whatnot, and security, etc., whatnot, right? And well-being, etc. This is something that the community that descends from them could very much benefit from, right? Today, in today's modern times, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, etc., being able to work together in common unison, that would be a positive thing to look at and study and understand, etc. Versus let's make this a us versus them kind of a thing, right? Particularly when the best you have is a narrative that has you getting your cursive Hebrew from an Ashkenazi Jew whom you say can't even be a Jew. I said a mouthful, my fault.
Yeah, no, it's funny. But one of the things I was thinking about while I was making that Yiddish video is how they pushed the narrative of like the Ashkenazim didn't even know Hebrew until Ben Yehuda, and it was sort of I successfully resisted the urge to slip that into this video on this thought experiment on Yiddish, but I was tempted to bring that up. Like it's funny how you're now flirting with the idea of attributing this to the descendant of an Ashkenazi community, but or individual, but and there's nothing really coherent in terms of phrases coming out of this, and you yourselves, made the false claim that no Ashkenaz insinuated that Ashkenazim didn't know Hebrew yet. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, I saw your message that you got to go real soon, so we will wrap this up. Where's my joint at?
I want to send you 2 images. I'm actually pulling them up before I run.
No, you're good. 100% you're good. That's what I wanted to pull up. So my position has been this since day one, that there's going to be potentially multiple African scripts, as we should expect, being that there's, again, with the Gullah Geechee language, you can see over 20 different tribes and peoples contributing to that language and whatnot, right? And so my opinion is we need to take things slow, go on a pew by pew basis and identify what we can on each pew, because we might find language, we might not find language. However, what we're going to find, if nothing else, is an example of cultural unity that should be, again, a mark of a national treasure for the people who descend from the slave trade. There is so much that can be gleaned from the examples in this church. It's not even funny. And from the culture of these people themselves. But with that, let me go look at the images you're trying to send right quick. Come on, Facebook, come on.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just sent you a couple more images. And the reason why I sent these images is because I think sometimes when we do these comparisons, we do the comparisons with a very standard Arabic font, when, you could sort of switch up the Arabic font because there are different styles of writing Arabic. So I sent you, and these are using professional fonts, but just to show you like how things look even more like when using, fonts that are more representative of Arabic handwriting and so forth.
Yes, sir. Did you grab one with the Farsi on it?
Yeah. Well, not so much Farsi, but yeah, the Farsi script. The sort of a form of the Arabic script which is common amongst, but not limited to, and that should be pointed out. Common among, but not limited to, the written Farsi. Because it's interesting, because then it gets a lot more similar. And yeah, I sent those two to your Facebook. I sent it to you over private message. Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, like that looks even more alike. For those, I'm wondering what people in the chat see. And then I also sent you the same thing for La ilaha illallah,
Yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, I can definitely see it. And for me, I think that looks even more alike,
And so just to be clear, what are we looking at for the people?
So it's the same pew that Ilahi Nas was proposed for, but what happened is underneath in the white text, right? That was typed out using the F.A.B.C script, right? It's a professional font that's representative of handwritten Arabic, or handwritten Arabic script, but especially popular amongst writers of Farsi, but not limited to them. It's also, used in Arabic as well, in Arabic handwriting, but it's a professional font. It's called the F.A.B.C font. And it's the same thing. It's Alif Lam Ha space Alif Lam Nun Alif Sin, Ilahi Nas typed out. And when it's in this font, you notice it looks even more similar, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, 100%. Like, so, and you showed this to me a while ago, and would drop my jaw when I saw it. I was like, wow, like, because this again points to the East African side of things, right? Which, so understand this, family. If there's potentially like some Arabic in a Farsi script, like or the Farsi way of writing Arabic, etc., that points to like the Arab slave trade going all the way up to Persia and whatnot, and coming down to East Africa, like through Ethiopia, Mozambique, all that type of stuff, and then someone ended up over here. Like that's again, that's an amazing potential fingerprint, and those are things we again. If for people talking about being potentially Lemba and all these other things, fam, like you can't shut down the East African side of the slave trade, and it's amazing to me that they would shut down things that would actually potentially show these kind of things, right? But let me go ahead and get this other picture real quick.
Yes, I see Elcom saying it looks alike to him and stuff like that. Yeah, it's funny how it looks even more alike when we switch the font. For me, that's significant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this looks at the next one. Let's see.
Come on up. Here we go.
There we go. Yeah, look at that. Like for me, that also, it gets even more similar, Again, not perfect, but and this is like sort of representative of like a handwritten style, And then the thing is, it becomes even more when you take into account some of the things that they've said. Like Kelly Richardson has said, some of these markings were made by people, using chipper. He says that in the documentary,
right?
So obviously you're going to have a much harder time. You're not going to write smoothly. Then second, this whole idea that you have to understand that the people were under duress, they're removed from their culture, so as if to say that, things are much harder for them. And also some of these people could be, to a certain extent, losing contact with the language that they know, somewhat ignorant of it, And then so that, once they make room for all those sorts of explanations for Hebrew, then it sort of makes room for these sort of sloppy forms of Arabic as well.
And here comes another thing, right? Like, so if you have people coming from different parts of West Africa, so again, people need to understand in West Africa, like, even though like they're using a Ajami, etc., it's all different looking calligraphy and whatnot, right? So if you could potentially have people coming from West Africa using multiple West African forms of Arabic, East Africa using multiple forms, and having to come into America and might be blending stuff, right? There's so many possibilities with this stuff, man. It's not even funny, but that's why it's important to slow this down and so if I erase Arabic potentially being on the pews just for the sake of saying everything is sola trail that I can't prove, and when I try to prove it, I say it's multiple letters, different times, etc. I'm cutting my nose to spite my face, because I'm cutting off so many possible avenues of what the truth could be, and understanding where people are coming from and whatnot.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I see someone in the live chat asked what you have on the screen. What does it translate to? So this, if what's in the multicolored text reflects what's in the white text above it, it reads La ilaha illallah. There's no God but the God, or there's no God but Allah is the way Muslims popularly translate it.
Yes, sir. And as the Cryptic Quest was alluding to, the way they see it, those 3 lines to the right of the markings, that those two lines that are equilateral, etc. They believe that those are a shorthand version of the Tetragrammaton, and then again the Han, the Sa, and the Gaz potentially. And again, that's all potentially all. You potentially have a law and a shorthand version of Yahweh on the same pew. Just let that one marinate for a second.
You know what's interesting about that? That's something you could see in and I kid you not about this. I've seen this in Judeo-Arabic literature. Like I believe Sadia Gaon did it, although he didn't do it in the Arabic script, he did it in the Hebrew script, where he would do the yod, you know, for the Tetragrammaton, you know, the short hand of the Lord. So yod, and then he would put La ilaha illa huwa. You know, there was no God but him.
That's exactly what I'm thinking when I look at this, right? I don't think it like so in the documentary they connected to the gas potential. I'm like, nah, I don't. When I saw it in front of the La Law, I was like, wow, okay, this could get super interesting. Because again, one of the arguments that I make is that again, I obviously don't think that all African descent people coming off the slave ships are Israelites, etc. And I do believe if you find them, you're going to find them amongst mostly the Muslim population, right? Because you have a lot of converts, etc. Right? But that being the case, you have a lot of issues. You have a lot of instances where people are writing Hebrew in the Qurans, on the corners of papers, etc., on all kind of stuff. And I can see it being written in front of. Again, you would have the Tetragrammaton before the La ilaha illallah, right?
And there's a whole Solitreo on at the Vatican. You've seen that video on that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Yeah,
but by the way, the part that's not highlighted on the right. It looks to me, I mean, if we're just guessing here, it looks a bit like Ra Sin, like the first 2 letters of Rasul, but it almost as if someone was writing that and then stopped, you know, maybe they didn't know what to write, you know, or something like that. But of course, even with the dot above, it could be, you know, Za, you know, Zayn or something like that. But whatever the case, you know, it's almost like someone like you can, once they make room for this idea that someone barely familiar with the language, removed from the language, then you get all kinds of possibilities, like someone trying to write the Ra Sin and then not knowing where to go with it, or running out of space and stopping, you know.
Point being is that the markings on these pews aren't something to just quickly look at and make a quick decision. Like this is some really, really deep stuff that you got to sift through. And like if it's really going to be looked at scholastically, there's a lot of dips and dives and turns you got to go through. It's not a simple walk in the park. And it shouldn't be treated as such. And people trying to have a serious conversation shouldn't be scoffed at because they're trying to understand the depths of this thing. But just to understanding the depths of this thing, it undoes a narrative that people are trying to push on you. So this same crew of people are talking about, you'll hear them talk about this Sephardic Jew things, where like they believe that the African Americans, they came from Babylon to Spain, from Spain to West Africa, and from West Africa to America, right? That's their narrative. I don't agree with that narrative in any way, shape, or form, in the sense to where, well, I agree that there were Jews taken from Babylon to Spain, etc., but I don't believe that the African American population comes from Babylon to Spain to West Africa. That doesn't, to me, that doesn't make any logistical sense, right? It doesn't make any genetic sense. It doesn't make archaeological sense. It doesn't make historical sense, right? It doesn't make linguistic sense, and none of that type of stuff, right? So I have no issue saying that out loud because I don't believe in Santa Claus. I don't believe in the Easter Bunny. I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy, right? So
I believe in Santa Claus, but
right. I'm not going to tell grown people to do such. So if you give me a Santa Claus story, I'm not going to run with it, fam. And that was a Santa Claus story. Hence no secret Santa scholarship. You know what I'm saying? But
on that note, forgive me, I am going to have to run.
I was just going to close it right there anyway. So no worries. No worries. So I appreciate y'all for showing up. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the pointing to methodology, right? And again, you don't have to agree on things to have a civil conversation on stuff. And I hope we show that.
Exactly. And I've been saying that for a long time, that our discussions show that there was no need for like Kelly to, you know, or anyone to get immediately on this hostile footing. That if people want to see what a conversation with me could have looked like if we just stuck to discussing methodology, all they have to do is see. Well, I think I've been on 3 of your shows now, maybe 4. Yeah. You know.
And to that end, last point I'll say is that, like, so again, people need to remember, Kelly and I were scheduled to do a show and talk about the pews. Before me, like, so we made the schedule before me and Abu had sat down to talk, right? Kelly knew I was going to talk to Abu, right? And I was going to talk to him afterwards, but he refused to sit down after the PBS documentary came out because Boubacar Diakité said Arabic type of writing, and that snowballed into this whole issue we're into now, family. But again, this is what it looks like when you're willing to sit down and have a civil conversation with people you disagree with. And with that, I appreciate you for your time. I appreciate your wife for letting us have this time of yours.
Yes, this is actually in the room with me. So yeah, I'm gonna turn to the family now. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
God bless.
God bless and good night, family.
Good night.
Thank you.